And welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you on a wonderful Halloween Monday afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. A very special day in the history of 580 Sports Talk. We'll get to that in just a moment. We've got a massive amount to get to on the show today. We're going to start things off in just a moment with the Kansas State Wildcats obliterating the Oklahoma State Cowboys on Saturday to a degree that I think even the most ardent K-State fan did not think was possible in that matchup. A dominant blowout shutout victory for the Cats. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. Later on in the show, we will recap the entire college football weekend, and the Big 12 is getting paid. Tons of money will come to the Big 12 and all of its member schools in its next media rights deal. All of the parts of that you need to know we'll get to coming up at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. No Chiefs game this week, but plenty of NFL to talk about. In fact, a big trade just within the last half an hour or so. The Chicago Bears trading Roquan Smith to the Baltimore Ravens. So Roquan Smith, one of the better off-ball linebackers in the NFL, now in the AFC. Won't have to face the Chiefs this year, though. We'll talk all about all things NFL Week 8 with Matt Verderam of Fansided.com coming up at the bottom of this hour. Oh, and by the way, the Kansas City Royals have their new manager, Matt Quatraro. Okay, it is Quatraro. Okay, I couldn't remember. I know Fulton said something a little bit different earlier. I couldn't remember exactly what it was. Matt Quatraro, he is the newest manager of the Kansas City Royals. We will talk all about the former.
It is Quatraro. Excuse me.
It is Quatraro.
Yeah, double checked. Yeah.
Okay.
It is Quatraro.
Quatraro.
Right. Yeah.
Bang. We got it. We have already mastered the name. Day 2 of his reign atop the Royals. First full day.
Only had to very assuredly screw it up one time to make sure that we got it correctly for the rest of time.
So we'll talk all about Matt Quatraro coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. I think the Royals should be excited. He was a name that came up from the very beginning for this coaching search, managerial search, whatever. I think this is a hire that the Royals should be excited for, and we'll talk about why in the 4 o'clock hour. Let's also not forget it's Monday, so we'll recap the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we've got our October championship in What Is Wrong With You coming up at 4:20 today. My bleach tastes like Pepsi Cola versus the charred chicken complaint from Queens, New York. I am very excited. I love these two stories, so I'm very excited about our championship coming up at 4:20 today. And, of course, you are welcome to be a part of 580 Sports Talk on the Big O Tires text line. That number, as always, 785-272-9429. But, Dan, I mentioned that it is a big day for 580 Sports Talk and for all of 580 WIBW. Let's get to the website news first. That's a real quick piece of news for you. You've been going to WIBWnewsnow.com for many, many years, but there is a much easier way to get to our website starting today. All you have to do, much shorter, WIBWnewsnow.com. What is that? 11 characters plus the .com?
It's a lot, yes.
How about 7 characters? How about the easiest way that everybody refers to our radio station, the way that we refer to our radio station? As of today, you want to go to our website, just type in 580WIBW.com. That's all you need to type in.
We've shortened your workload by 36%. 580WIBW.com.
How about that math? Very well done. I would not have gotten that percentage that quickly. 580, just the numerals, WIBW.com. Much faster way to get to the website. Save you some time. It's, news now. Too many words, too many letters, too many syllables. 580 WIBW. Bang, short, sweet, and how we identify ourselves here at the station. And that is now how you can find us online, 580WIBW.com. The other big news, I've been telling you for 2-3 weeks at this point. You got to go follow us on YouTube. Sports on 580 on YouTube. This is the first show in the history, as far as I'm aware, of 580 Sports Talk, of any sports talk programming on this station, the Sports Voice of Kansas. We are live streaming on YouTube. You can see Dan. You can see me. You can see Dan's sweet all Seahawks get up today because Geno Smith is apparently him. He is the one. I am rocking my beloved Charles Barkley on Saturday Night Live t-shirt with the entirety of Nirvana on it. This is a huge day. We've been telling you for so long. Go follow us on YouTube. We're going to be on here every day. This is not a one-time thing. This is now a new way that you can interact with us on 580 Sports Talk. You can find us on YouTube. We're also streaming this live on our Twitter. Just head to the Twitter. It came out in a tweet. Hey, 580 Sports Talk, October 31st, 2022. Bang, it's right there. Another way to interact with us. Nothing is changing on the radio. 580, 104.9, nothing changes whatsoever. Where you just listen to the stream online at the website through the Alpha Media Player, all that. Nothing changes there. We're just also now on YouTube as well.
You can now watch us and be certain that you are correct in assuming all these years that we indeed do have faces for radio. But we also get to show off our swag a little bit. We also get to show off the drip a little bit here and there. I have a Super Bowl champion Seahawks hoodie that I wore today in anticipation, A, for enjoying a Seahawk victory Monday, and B, because I knew people would get to see it. And I am looking forward to styling a bit with my fitted cap collection as we go along here. I've got some very cool hats that I'm excited for you all to see at YouTube. So, yeah, we're going to have some fun with this and just more ways for people to see the show, interact with the show, consume the show. We're excited about it. So consume. Grateful listeners, consume.
Dan, as you can see, if you're watching on the YouTube or on Twitter, is rocking the vintage Seahawks logo. Does vintage count like 20 years?
Yeah, it's vintage. They don't wear it anymore, so it's vintage.
Yeah, it's close enough. I've got the Montgomery Biscuits minor league baseball team hat on today. This was a gift from my wife on my birthday. So, yeah, the swag, the facial hair that I clearly should have shaved off before I came into work today.
I trimmed my beard in anticipation.
It's looking good.
Yeah, I cleaned it up a little bit. I was looking a little feral over the weekend. So I cleaned that up a little bit. So again, in anticipation for this big day.
So you guys can now check us out again on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. Shout out to our guy Jason checking us out on the YouTube, says awesome. Would love for you guys to interact. You can comment on the YouTube and we will see it. It's like a secondary text line. In fact, this is better for all the people. Maybe not to look at my mug, but otherwise great for everyone. New way to interact with us, new way to watch Dan and I. And again, every day. This is an everyday thing from now on. So you can listen to us online, on YouTube, and of course on 580 WIBW. Very excited about this. So go subscribe, go bookmark the YouTube. Very excited for this. And again, you can watch on Twitter as well. If you haven't been following already, check us out, Sports on 580 on Twitter. But we've got plenty to get to sports-wise on today's show, Dan. And let's start with the Kansas State Wildcats, who I believe you picked on Friday on our show.
I did. I said they would win on Friday.
I said Oklahoma State, but that I was not confident in it at all, and I thought it was a true toss-up game.
The Vegas line reflected that for most of the week. It had actually jumped the fence. It started at 1.5 in favor of Oklahoma State, flipped to 1.5 in favor of Kansas State. Sat there most of the week, jumped on Saturday to -2.5 in Kansas State's favor. I can't help but wonder if some of that had to do with the initial indication coming out of Manhattan, which was that Adrian Martinez was going to play. He came out early for warmups. He threw the ball around. He came out with the rest of his team for the regular pregame stuff, and he led the first team offense. Everybody in the press box thought it was going to be Adrian Martinez who took the field when Kansas State started their afternoon on offense against Oklahoma State. And then it was Will Howard instead. Out of nowhere, seemingly, it was Will Howard and not Adrian Martinez. It had been one great big bait and switch. To what extent that affected the game, I don't know. All I know is this. Will Howard and the Kansas State Wildcats proceeded to drop anvils on Mike Gundy's head for 60 minutes of football in what I have to imagine goes down as one of the great performances in Kansas State football history. To do that to a top 10 team, 48-0 almost doesn't do it justice. It was 35-0 at the half. Oklahoma State never looked like scoring.
No.
It's not like Oklahoma State got close and they were, 4th down and 3 and they went for it and they didn't get it, or they got in the red zone and fumbled the ball. No, they never ran a play in the red zone. It was utter and complete domination, the likes of which you do not normally see. It is rare for a ranked team even to do this to a ranked team, especially a top 10 team. When you go back and look at the annals of college football, top 10 teams getting shut out with a deficit like this, you got to go back to like the 20s, the 30s, the 60s to see scores like this. 48-0 doesn't happen. It's not supposed to happen. It happened. I was there. I witnessed it. And I'm not sure that if I hadn't witnessed it, that I would believe it.
And I believe, if I'm quoting the broadcast on Fox correctly, that was the biggest win for K-State against a league opponent since 2010, which, unfortunately, for my favorite university, was a 52-point win over the University of Kansas. But beside that point, KU in 2010 stunk. They were no good. Oklahoma State in 2022 was not just ranked, okay? Because there's a difference between like 15th and 25th or 10th and 25th or something. Oklahoma State was 9th in the country and was coming off of its own big win from a week ago. A very impressive win, a late surging win over Texas in a game that also meant a lot in the league race. We considered this a de facto semifinal for the Big 12 title this year. We talked about that all last week, kept bringing up that talking point. This is like one of the college football playoff finals in the way it was just a blowout from the very beginning, the way so many of those games have gone since the advent of the playoff. I mean, it was just nonstop, and you can't even really point to this one thing is the reason why K-State won. You know, they were just unflappable defensively, and they dominated for a full 60 minutes. Or the offense just couldn't be touched, and they made too many mistakes, Oklahoma State did, on their own offensive side. No, this was a complete ass-whooping for everybody. Every single person who was involved. The defense was great, obviously. They didn't allow a single point, not even a fluke point, a garbage time point, nothing. Although I do feel bad for Gunnar Gundy a little bit. I know, coach's kid, don't feel too bad for him, whatever. He was shaking violently,
Literally.
waiting to take the snap.
Literally, they got it on video.
They kept putting the camera on him. I thought,
Yeah.
come on. Give me a break.
Yeah, they didn't do him any kind of favor, did they?
So the defense was awesome. The defensive line was incredible. Julius Brents had a great game. Everybody pretty much
Brents
had a great game.
pick. The Kansas State secondary was schemed to perfection. Joe Klanderman called a perfect game. He had that K-State defense in looks that Spencer Sanders couldn't make throws against. Every time Sanders tried to make a throw, it felt like to the boundary, he was throwing over a perfectly placed defender, trying to drop it in the bucket. That's a hard throw for an NFL caliber quarterback to make. Never mind a guy who's kind of hit and miss as a passer when he's healthy.
Yep.
And we know that Sanders isn't exactly 100% right now going through this season. It was a exceptionally well called defensive game and then well executed because they won first down frequently. They didn't let Oklahoma State get big chunks on the ground. I know the Cowboys were down their starting running back, and they're not a great running team in the first place, but Kansas State made sure they couldn't get any traction with the ground game. They had to make downfield throws on second down, on third down, and they got after Spencer Sanders. They got him off platform, and they forced him to throw into some really difficult spots. It was exquisite the way things were called on the defensive side. And it has to be to shut out a team that is that good, that is capable of going out and scoring 40, which they've done in their previous two games, back-to-back weeks. To shut them out, it takes an A-plus game from everybody involved, defensive coordinator on down to, guys like Nick Allen, like Jake Clifton, who it looked for all the world was not going to see the field this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, he's the backup middle linebacker. And he played really well. This is a true freshman getting his first real sniff of game time in the Big 12. And he was noticeable in his impact and noticeable in a positive way. So it was a super game by the defense. We got to make sure we give them their flowers too. But of course, when you score 48, everybody wants to talk about the offense and everybody wants to talk about Will Howard. And I was part of the media scrum that talked to Howard after the game in Manhattan on Saturday. And I thought it was really, I think Will Howard is very self-aware. I think he knows that his first 2 years were full of struggles. I think he heard some of the criticism, because how could you not? It was pretty deafening when it came to how Kansas State performed when Will Howard was on the field relative to how they performed when his, the starter, Skylar Thompson, was on the field. But I thought it was really revealing that Will Howard said, and I'm paraphrasing what he had to say. You can actually hear what he literally had to say. Our audio, post-game audio from that, is at our website, 580wibw.com. But he said, I know it sounds like a cliche, but the game really has slowed down for me. He's processing things at a speed now that is commensurate with his ability. He's not all the way there as a passer yet. 21 for 37 passing is a sign that he missed some throws that were out there. He missed some short throws. He missed some deep shots. There was a drop or two, but he's got a really strong arm. He's finding the open guy. He's trusting it down the field trusting the throw, trusted that 4th and 10 to Cade Warner for the touchdown, trusted that deep ball down the seam to Phillip Brooks that ended up being, I think that was their 3rd touchdown of the day. I think that made it 21-0 at the time. Trusted that quick out to Deuce Vaughn at the goal line with 12 seconds left that made it 35-0 going into the locker room. Playing with a tremendous amount of confidence. Confidence that if you had watched Will Howard play the last 2 years, you would genuinely wonder where it comes from.
It's like someone stepped into his body, like a new personality almost.
Well, it speaks volumes about him, but it speaks volumes about this coaching staff.
Agreed.
And the way that they've had his back through the struggles. Chris Kleiman has remained a vocal Will Howard supporter and a vocal Will Howard believer. And you see how that has manifested itself into a dramatically improved version of the player as he's gotten older, as he's understood things better, as he's in an offense now that might be a better fit for his skill sets. The Klein offense seems to fit him better than the Messingham offense. The Adrian Martinez stuff, he seems to really run very exceptionally well.
Well, I'm glad you bring up Martinez. And I don't mean to take away from the goodness that was this win for K-State. But you are now in a very interesting scenario with your quarterback. I don't know what Adrian's health is going to be going forward. No idea. I assume he'll probably be ready to go next week. What do you do? Because Martinez has earned the job. He has played well enough. You haven't, you had the one game against Tulane, but other than that, you've mostly played very well this season. Take the TCU game out. Everybody was getting hurt. TCU's really good. That's fine.
Now, you're 5-1 with Adrian Martinez as your starter, and he hasn't thrown an interception or fumbled the ball away. Like, he's done everything you've asked him to do. And I understand the compulsion. I made this argument before about different quarterback situations in different places. It's hard to bench the starter because of injury and go to the backup and then stay with the backup because then it becomes harder to go back to the starter.
Agreed.
You can always go back to the backup. That's what he's there for. He understands. Like, Will Howard seems to get it. Like, he's playing because Adrian Martinez is hurt, not because Adrian Martinez is incapable, not because Martinez has struggled. He's in there to fill in. This is his job. He's the backup. In fact, if he plays more than 2 games, he doesn't get to execute what was his original plan and the coaching staff's original plan for this season, which was for him to redshirt. So I think he gets it and the team gets it. And Martinez is the kind of guy with a good enough head on his shoulders that I think this situation is going to resolve itself in a way that is fine for Kansas State. But yeah, let Adrian Martinez go out and start turning the ball over when he does get healthy. And the calls for Will Howard are going to be very loud, and he'll have earned those with his play. But Kansas State appears to be in one of those good situations. You know the old cliche, well, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you ain't got a quarterback. That's if you're waffling, if you're moving guys in and out, alternating drives, things like that. No, Kansas State has 2 quarterbacks and can win football games against good teams with either of those guys. That's nothing but a positive.
I think the one argument you can make, because I think Martinez will be your long-term starter. I do. I think he is going to get the nod unless something bad happens, tons of turnovers, another injury, whatever. He is going to be the guy. I will see the argument, though. We have talked, and Chris Kleiman has talked. He talked earlier in the season after the Tulane game, among others, that, hey, we want to see Adrian let it rip a little bit more. We want to see him throw the ball, chuck it a little bit more through the air. Trust the arm, trust his receivers, trust what he's seeing a little bit more. 2 games, 2 200-yard performances for Will Howard. One of those games, he didn't even start. He didn't even play the entire game. He went for 225. This week, 296 yards on that 21 of 37 passing, 4 touchdowns. Martinez, 6 games in which he's played the entire game, 2 200-yard performances. The argument I can see, and I don't think this is going to happen, and I think Kleiman and Klein and the rest of the staff are going to go with the veteran, even though he's not a veteran necessarily at K-State, but he is a veteran. He's played a lot of college football. I think the one argument the other way is Howard is letting it rip and has let it rip more with his arm. I don't know if that's a matter of play calling. I don't know if that's a matter of confidence. Maybe it's a matter of Will Howard saying, hey, I know what this team thinks of Avery Johnson. I know Jake Ruley was a 4-star recruit, and at some point in the near future, there's going to be a decision about his future as well. I know this team really liked Adrian Lara. I want to prove that I belong here too, so I am going to let it rip. I am going to take those chances. I don't know what the reasoning is, but I could see that argument at the very least, which maybe, in turn, gives Martinez a little bit more confidence. Damn, Cade Warner can really play. Cade Warner can run some routes. Ben Sinnett's a fullback who is running routes like one of those receiving tight ends in the NFL. I mean, he has looked way better than I thought he would down the field. Malik Knowles is a big play guy. I can make throws, and these guys will make plays if my pass isn't perfect, which I haven't had before. So maybe this sparks a little passing confidence for Martinez as well.
Yeah, Adrian Martinez threw for 10,000 yards at Nebraska. Like, he can make throws. He's capable of doing everything that Will Howard has done the last 2 weeks. And maybe this does. Maybe in a way this gives him some confidence to do that through the air. And maybe he's even better on the ground than Howard is. And you add that element, take some of the heat off of Deuce Vaughn and DJ Giddens in the backfield. And the offense ends up looking even better down the stretch because of that. But either way you look at it, either decision they make, the future all of a sudden looks really, really exciting for Kansas State again.
Agreed.
They've got 4 games left. Texas in prime time at the Bill on Saturday. If there is no World Series Game 7, that game's going to be nationally televised. That game's going to be on Fox unless there's Game 7 of the World Series on Saturday. So that is another big-time audience that will get to see Kansas State. And if they beat Texas, then it's Baylor, West Virginia, and KU, and they can go 2-1 in that stretch and still make, in all likelihood, the Big 12 championship game.
I think there's a good chance they go 4-0 in these last 4 games.
The way they played on Saturday, everything is on the table. A Big 12 championship, a New Year's Six Bowl, it's all out there. They showed it on Saturday that they can be a complete football team. It was dreamland in Manhattan on Saturday.
We've got plenty more college football to get to later on in the show. We'll take a look around the entire college football world this week. We'll also take a look at the Big 12's new media deal, and a great job by Brett Yormark. But before we get to Matt Verderam later this hour to talk NFL, we'll take a break. We'll come back, recap the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly here on 580 Sports Talk. It's time to recap the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly on 580 Sports Talk. We'll get through this, then get to Matt Verderam to talk all things NFL. And Dan, my good for the weekend actually takes us to the NFL. And my good journeyman / overlooked quarterbacks. What a great week for those guys. One, Taylor Heineke of Washington, second week in a row, picks up a win. He is now one of 2 quarterbacks for Washington since 1999 to have a winning record in games he has started. One of 2. I think the other one might be Kirk Cousins. It's either Kirk Cousins or RG3. They've had 26 starting quarterbacks in that time. 2 have a winning record. One's Taylor Heineke. He's not the most talented. He's probably bottom half the league in terms of talent. He is so much fun. Like, when you watch that team with Carson Wentz, it's boring. It sucks. It's slow. He is not very likable. Taylor Heineke's probably going to do some really dumb stuff in the course of 60 minutes. He's also going to do some stuff that's really fun and exciting. That is way better as a fan. Not that I'm a fan of Washington, but he had another big game. They have a comeback win to knock off Sam Ehlinger and the Indianapolis Colts. Good pick on your part. And then maybe the game of the year in the NFL so far was Panthers-Falcons, 2 of the least talented rosters in the whole NFL. PJ Walker and Marcus Mariota, 2 men I love so much for their football careers. XFL legend and a guy who I still believe in. I will believe in Mariota until I can't believe in him anymore. They had the game of the year. That was one of the most exciting football games we've seen all season. 2 guys totally overlooked, and, well, one kind of fizzled out the first time he got a chance to be a starter, but that's beside the point. Overlooked quarterbacks. Great week for them.
My good, I don't know where else to bring it up, so I'm going to bring it up here. And I don't, we don't talk a ton of NBA on this program, and his team did not win their most recent game last night. They lost to the lowly Los Angeles Lakers, but it is just 7 games into Christian Braun's NBA career, and he is already the first guy off the bench for the Denver Nuggets.
He rules.
It is really, really neat to see that this has happened to the Kansas kid, Blue Valley Northwest star, KU guy, first-round pick kind of out of nowhere. Most people didn't expect he'd go in the first round. He went number 21 overall to Denver. And following the team as I do, I can tell you, Michael Malone doesn't play rookies.
Mm-hmm.
He does not trust rookies easily. It takes a lot of rookies. Like last year, they drafted Bones Highland out of VCU in the first round. And it took him about 20, 25, 30 games to really earn his way into the circle of trust.
Mm-hmm.
It took Christian Braun 3 halves. And it became evident that he was somebody that Malone was going to trust and that the Nuggets are going to need if they're going to be a championship contender in the Western Conference, which they fancy themselves as. They've got a ways to go as a team. They're working some injured guys back in and a lot of new pieces, but Christian Braun is a part of things there in a way that I didn't expect him to be, at least not right away. And I was one of the more optimistic people about how that fit would be for him in Denver. I just want to say that's really cool that Christian Braun is a bona fide NBA rotation player right off the rip for a team with championship aspirations.
It's awesome. It's overused now, especially online. He really does have that dog in him, though.
Oh, 100%.
He wanted to match up on LeBron in their first meeting together. I mean, he matched up with Steph Curry. He got a key turnover against Jordan Poole when they played the Warriors the other day.
He got an and one over his former teammate Ochai Agbaji the other night when they play Utah.
Jayhawk on Jayhawk crime in that one. Real quick bad for me. The Raiders. I knew they weren't going to be very good. I figured they would be last in the AFC West this year. They are putrid. Like, Devontae Adams had no catches through 3 quarters yesterday. They did not score.
They didn't cross midfield until there were 3 minutes left in the game.
They are truly pathetic. I mean, some guys are destined to always be coordinators. Stop giving McDaniels chances. Major failure in Denver. Literally a no-show in Indianapolis. And now it has taken half a season, and the Raiders are getting worse week after week. They're very bad.
My bad. It was a really rough week for the quarterback class of 2021.
Ooh.
Trevor Lawrence, terrible. Zach Wilson, horrible. Mac Jones, good enough to win, but still really bad. Justin Fields, not great.
He did have the funniest play of the weekend, though.
When he vaulted Micah Parsons. If he were less athletic, any other quarterback in the league probably trips over Parsons, and that play is dead, but he's too good an athlete.
You just get
pogoed right over him.
A shoestring on him. He is down near midfield. Instead,
it was so funny.
Fields hurdles over the guy who recovered the fumble. This ain't college, Justin. He's still a live player.
Really, really funny.
Very funny. Yeah, that class is looking rough. That class is looking real rough right now. My ugly, the Michigan State players jumping the 2 Michigan players in the tunnel.
Yeah.
Michigan has played at the Big House for 90 years. The tunnel has never been a problem until the last 2 weeks. That's not a tunnel problem.
Yeah.
People bringing that up.
Maybe that's a James Franklin and Mel Tucker and the programs that they're running problem.
Who would have thought Mel Tucker, who has failed everywhere, would not work at Michigan State after getting a huge contract. Oh, wait.
It's just very Sparty of Sparty. That's how they act when they're down. When they're up, they love to beat their chests, and when they're down, that's how they act.
They beat up on others. More fight in the tunnel than they had the entire game when they got whooped by Michigan.
That's the Michigan State way. Always has been.
Let's take a timeout. When we come back on the other side of this break, Matt Verderam is going to join us for our look around the NFL in Week 8 here on 580 Sports Talk.
Football.
Matt!
Okay, now go out there and catch a ball for a change, all right?
Matt? You just don't understand football, Marge. Matt.
Pain heals. Chicks dig scars. Glory lasts forever.
How could he not be romantic about football, man?
Matt Verderam of Fansided.com joins us here on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. You can find Matt's work over at Fansided.com, including the Stacking the Box column, a must-read every Monday following busy Sundays in the NFL. You can also follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Verderam. Matt, first question I've got for you, and I cannot believe this is an earnest, honest question. Was Panthers-Falcons maybe the best game of the season so far?
Most entertaining. I think it was that. Best game? There were a lot of bad plays in that game, but it was a great ending. In a year where I got to be honest, I get paid to watch all the games and do that. And listen, I wouldn't trade my job for anything in the world. There's been a lot of bad football this season. Like Brady said that a few weeks ago, and he was not wrong. There are probably a good 3/4 of the league right now. It's just not good. These teams are just average at best, and a lot of just really bad teams this season.
So that's a great jumping off point What do you think the reason for that is? I think early in the year, you can kind of go with the, oh, well, so many teams are doing the too high thing, and, a lot of quarterbacks moved places this year, the Matt Ryans, Russell Wilsons, whatever. I mean, we're just about halfway through the season now, Matt, and it really hasn't changed. There was a little bit more scoring around the league this week. That game I just mentioned, 34-37. Yep. Bears-Cowboys was weirdly high scoring. You had plenty in the Miami-Detroit game, as was expected. So this week is maybe a little bit better, but what is the reason why so many offenses have struggled? Offenses that we expected to be really good this year have just pretty much been flat, other than the Eagles, Chiefs, and Bills.
I think because you're seeing, and I've thought about this question a lot, I've been asked this question a lot, and my answer's kind of morphed over the course of the last month and a half. I've really come to the conclusion, I think it's because a lot of the quarterbacks who we've always associated with being really good to great are just not really good to great anymore. And the guys that are, a few of them certainly are that standard, Mahomes, Josh Allen, but a few of the other ones are just married to bad situations and or bad coaching. Justin Herbert's great. He's married to a coach that thinks that every pass should be 4 yards in the air. Tom Brady, that situation's a disaster. They have a defensive-minded head coach and a run-first offensive coordinator. They're not good. The Packers have no weapons. Stafford, nobody can block for him, and they have one weapon. You look at Matt Ryan, who's been excellent for the better part of 15 years. He got benched for Sam Ellinger. Russell Wilson is legitimately playing like a bottom-tier quarterback right now. So you have all these things. Derek Carr, you don't think Derek Carr is a great player, but certainly he's been a good player throughout his career. Derek Carr is surrounded by Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, and Hunter Renfrow, and he's on pace for less than 4,000 passing yards. They're not well coached. So you have all these things. I think it's just a combination of there's some really bad quarterback play in about half the league right now, and then you have another 7 or 8 quarterbacks who are used to saying, hey, look, that guy's really good or he's phenomenal. And they're just either not playing well or they're in horrible situations or in a couple of cases, they're old. And so I think that's really a big part of it.
I know they didn't play this week, and we'll get to plenty of the games and players who did play in just a moment. But you brought up Justin Herbert, and I don't know what Brandon Staley's role with that offense is. We know of him as a defensive guy because he was defensive coordinator with the Rams, although he did play an offensive position when he was in college. His offensive coordinator is Joe Lombardi, who I could not believe they hired last year, the former offensive coordinator in Detroit, who I said some very not nice things if he was named anything other than Lombardi. Why? Like, what is the process behind hiring these guys who have proven before they just can't get the job done? Dan and I were talking about Josh McDaniels earlier, who has been a total failure at one place and a literal no-show in another, and his offense stinks. You've got this Joe Lombardi situation with the Chargers. They stink. Their offense should not be that bad with a quarterback like Justin Herbert. I mean, is it as simple as it's just nepotism in a good old boys club, or is there something more to that?
No, it's nepotism, and it's a good old boys club. The NFL is very incestuous, and so you have these coaches that just, I mean, go look at a Wikipedia page of an assistant coach in the NFL who's like 55 years old. There's 12 different places they've coached because, look, they know the systems and they're competent to an extent, and they can do enough, and they have experience. And I mean, the reality is Joe Lombardi can't coach. Not as an offensive coordinator. I mean, maybe as a positional coach he can. He cannot coach. He is not qualified to be an offensive coordinator. I know that he's done it. That doesn't make him qualified. I work construction in the summer. You don't want me building your house. I'm not qualified to build your house. Your house will fall over. You will die. Like, you don't. That doesn't mean experience. Doesn't mean qualification. And so you have these coaches. Josh McDaniels, and I made this point all offseason, has stunk every single place that he has been where he's not been with Tom Brady. Every single place. He was awful with the Rams. He was terrible in Denver. He no-showed, as you said, in Indianapolis. And now he's with the Raiders with a team that has a ton of weapons. They can't score. They didn't cross midfield until a 2-minute warning against the Saints. And the Saints were missing half their starting defense. So I think it's a lot of just, you have these coaches around the league who, quite honestly, they're not good. I mean, if you realistically looked at the league right now, and we don't have time to do it, of course, at this moment, but how many coaches in the league would you say that guy is a proven, legitimate head coach, like somebody that if he's your head coach and not trying to upgrade off. How many guys are there? I would say the over-under is probably 7.5, 8.5. It's just, there's not many. There are not many. Maybe it's a little higher. Maybe it's 9.5. It is. I mean, there's not many coaches who you say, yeah, I feel really, really good about that guy coaching my team.
Matt Verderame is our guest. He covers the National Football League for FanSided. The Stacking the Box column is a Monday must-read. The Stacking the Box podcast is a must-listen. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. He joins us every Monday at this time on 580 Sports Talk. I think another issue, Matt, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is that you mentioned some of the old guard of quarterbacks not performing to previous standards, guys like Brady and Rodgers and Wilson. Well, the young guard is not looking terribly promising. The class of 2021 at quarterback had a particularly difficult day on the field yesterday. Zach Wilson was horrendous. Trevor Lawrence really bad in a loss to the Broncos in London. It was not an encouraging first NFL start from Malik Willis, class of 22 yesterday. Kenny Pickett's got 8 picks and only 2 touchdowns since he took over as quarterback. Does the league need to go back to the single wing? Like, what is wrong with these young quarterbacks, and can they be salvaged?
I don't think most can be, because I just think when you watch, like I watched Trevor Lawrence in London on Sunday morning against Denver. Denver has a good defense. Just let's say that. But you watch that game, and I know Lawrence had no chance as a rookie. No one's arguing that point. I do think that his ceiling is something like Kirk Cousins, but you didn't draft the number 1 Kirk Cousins. You drafted number 1 to be a Super Bowl quarterback. Well, Kirk Cousins, with due respect to him, like, he can win a playoff game for you. He's not going to the Super Bowl. He's not winning the Super Bowl. And so I think when you look at a lot of these guys, the game's just too fast for them. They can't process it quick enough. And that sounds like I'm saying they're dumb. I don't feel that way at all. I don't think these guys are dumb. I think what's happening is you come out of college, and college these days is very much a lot of spread offense. You're gonna take the ball. You're gonna take about 2 steps worth of a drop and just throw it. And it's an easy game to play. Think about where these kids have come from, right? Like Justin Fields, who, by the way, of all of them, I think I'm the highest on, because I think if the Bears got him any talent, he'd actually be pretty good. Comes out of Ohio State, right? A factory of receivers and talent. Mac Jones, Alabama. Okay, you look at Clemson. Clemson's been one of the preeminent programs for the last decade with Dabo Swinney. You look at all these schools. Now there's the exception, guys like a Trey Lance, North Dakota State. But most of these schools, these kids are coming out of, and they come out of these schools where they play the spread. They got 3 or 4 receivers who are going to the pros. In some cases, it's first-round picks. And now they come into the league, and it's, okay, hey, listen, you've got to be able to call the protection out. Then you've got to be able to understand different route combinations. And, okay, now they're going to have a sight adjustment because this linebacker, he's playing inside the hash. Oh, well, he just took 3 steps outside the hash. That changes everything about the way this play's got to go. The hardest position in sports to play is quarterback, and I don't think guys are coming into the league prepared. Now, years ago, in like the 90s, that was also the case, but for a different reason, because in college football teams ran the ball constantly. But in the 90s, you had a lot of times a year or two to sit on the bench and to learn. And if you were bad as a rookie, nobody cared. Well, now, I mean, if Pittsburgh is a top 5 draft pick and they can draft, I don't know, Bryce Young, are they not going to take him because they have Kenny Pickett? Like, I think the NFL world has just changed. And so you have the situation where young guys are not only unprepared, but they're expected to just immediately be good. And if they're not that, they're on the next ticket out of town.
Let's talk about some good football for a change. Who had the best Sunday, in your opinion? Who had the best all-around performance, maybe served a little bit of notice? Who was the most impressive team to you in yesterday's slate?
You know, it was a weird slate of games. I would say San Francisco was impressive. Without Deebo Samuel, without Kyle Juszczyk, without Armstead and Kinlaw on the defensive line, they went out and they dominated the Rams. And look, the Rams have not been good. We all understand the issues they have. I outlined some of them a few minutes ago. But coming off a bye, 3-3, they just seen each other. You figure there's going to be some corrections. The Niners are beat up. Niners went in there and just steamrolled them. I led my column with Christian McCaffrey. He made their lives a lot easier. I don't have the number right in front of me, but I know McCaffrey in the game touched the ball on first down 16 times and was averaging over 5.5 yards per play. If you do that, everything in the playbook opens up for second and third down. If Jimmy Garoppolo had the most efficient game of his season yesterday, there's a reason, because they're at 2nd and 4 all the time now. So it changes the way you can play. Plus, he's got the safety valve of, hey, I'll just swing out to McCaffrey. One of his touchdown passes went that way. So I thought San Francisco, even without Debo and a few of the other key members of the team that I mentioned, they're showing you all that they can do. I didn't think there were a lot of teams that were terribly impressive yesterday. I mean, Miami going on the road, getting down 14 and coming back. I mean, the party that says, look, they got down 14 to the Lions. The other party says they came back, they won. Tua looked very good. Tyreek Hill's on an all-time pace right now. I think Miami deserves some credit. I think they've been kind of forgotten about because they had that 3-game losing streak when they're all beat up. The Dolphins are good. And then I don't know what to make of the Titans. The Titans are on a 5-game win streak. And the Titans yesterday had a quarterback post a QBR of 4.1. And they won going away because they played the Texans. So that'll be interesting when Tennessee comes to Arrowhead on Sunday.
Just a couple more questions for Matt Verderam of Fansided.com, joining us here on 580 Sports Talk, as he does every single Monday at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour. You can find Matt on Twitter at Matt Verderam. And, of course, go check out all of his great work, including the Stacking the Box column over at Fansided.com. Matt, the NFL trade deadline, it comes up tomorrow. I believe it's 3 o'clock Central Time when it is officially set. We did have one big trade today. Let's get to that real fast. The Chicago Bears sending linebacker Roquan Smith to the Baltimore Ravens for a 2nd-rounder, a 5th-rounder, and veteran A.J. Klein. Who do you like the move for better, or is that a win-win trade for those two teams?
This is going to sound kind of weird. I love this trade for the Bears. It's not because I don't think Roquan Smith's a really good player. But Roquan Smith is not the Fred Warners of the world, the Bobby Wagner in his prime, the Shaq Leonard when he's healthy. Like, Roquan Smith's really good. Roquan Smith has never made a Pro Bowl. Like, I think he's a really good player. But if you're Chicago, you're thinking to yourself, all right, look, we need to completely reset the roster. He is going to command a major contract at a non-premium position next year. We don't want to pay that contract because we want to have this money free and clear going forward so we can address some premium positions that they certainly need help at. Think corner, edge, receiver, offensive tackle. So the Bears pick up what could be a top, 50 to 60 pick, and they get a fit. But they also save all this cap space. Now, the Ravens, look, I get it. I'm not knocking them for the trade in the sense that he's a very good player. They need help defensively. He slots in the middle of that defense with Patrick Queen. That should make them much better on the second level. The concern I have for Baltimore is that doesn't fix your biggest problem. You can't throw the football. You need a receiver. Now Bateman's out for a bunch of weeks with a foot injury. Like, you need a receiver. And now they're compelled. They got to pay Roquan Smith a fortune because now Roquan Smith and his representation have all the leverage in the world. And I got to tell you, if I'm Lamar Jackson and they pay Roquan Smith $20 million a year, $18 million a year, I'm sitting there thinking, am I ever going to get paid? Like, now part of that's on Lamar by all reports that with the Ravens have tried to engage and hasn't gone well. But you do just wonder, like, at some point here, the Ravens just do not invest really in their offense. They've invested in Ronnie Stanley, which unfortunately because of injuries, that's been a very questionable deal. Mark Andrews, but what else? They have all this money tied up in the defense. The defense has been awful this year. I think they're better because of it, but I think that they kind of missed the mark in the sense they need to get better in other places, and they need to spend money in other places.
All right, Matt, we've got about 30 seconds here before we've got to say goodbye. So one player that you think could or almost certainly will be on the move before the deadline tomorrow is who?
Bradley Chubb. I think if you're the Broncos, you need to recoup some of the draft capital to trade away for Russell Wilson. You have to. Like, you can't – that team cannot go into the draft this year with no first and second round picks based off the way it's looked. It just can't. The Broncos have to get some capital back. And while they have a few other guys that can maybe get minor pieces for, Chubb is the big guy. I expect that he will get moved, although Denver winning on Sunday, does that change anything? And then Josh Allen in Jacksonville, I think if you're the Jags, you'd probably need a first for him. But if you get that offer to you with where they're at, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Matt Verderam covers the entire NFL for Fansided.com. Check him out on Twitter at Matt Verderam. And, of course, go check out the Stacking the Box column and all of Matt's other work at Fansided.com. Matt, as always, appreciate the time. Enjoy Monday Night Football. We'll talk to you next week.
Hey, take care, guys.
That is Matt Verderam from Fansided.com. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of the show, The Royals have a new manager. What should we know about Matt Quatrero? We'll also talk about the Big 12's new media deal, and we've got our October championship in What Is Wrong With You. It all comes up after our national and local news right here on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way on 580 WIBW and FM News 104.9. Not just on the radio, though. As of today, we announced it earlier, we are now live streaming the show on our YouTube channel. I was telling you folks, we had big news, and now every single day on 580 Sports Talk, it will not just be the radio feed. No. We are also now online, live streaming on YouTube and on our Twitter account every single day for the duration of 580 Sports Talk. We are launching our new live stream today, but never fear, because Mic'd Up is also going to be live streaming every single day. That's right, Jake and Fulton as well, live every day on the Sports on 580 WIBW YouTube account. So go to YouTube if you haven't already subscribed, and thank you to those of you that have so far. Go to YouTube, look up Sports on 580 WIBW. You can also just search that on Google. Just go to google.com, type in Sports on 580 WIBW YouTube. It'll pop up. It'll be the first result. Go to that, subscribe, bookmark the page, whatever you need to do. We are live streaming the show in studio every day. We just saw Smitty, who does everything. He's the guy who fixes everything. He just walked behind me on the camera right here. You can see Dan's sweet Seahawks attire today, the retro hat, the Super Bowl champions sweatshirt. You can see all of it on YouTube, also streaming on our Twitter account at Sports on 580. Very excited about this. And now you get to see what we actually look like. I came in contact with someone fairly recently who had never seen me before, someone who I've talked to, I've done interviews with before, and they were definitely surprised by my height. Like, they were not aware of how tall I actually am. I'm 6'4". Like, I'm like 96th percentile of height or something. I'm fairly tall. And this person was not aware of that. Just having heard my voice on the phone or on the radio, did not know that. And I walk in and their eyes just lit up like, whoa, was not expecting that. And now you can see, I'm sitting down, but if I were to stand up, you can see only my torso would be on the camera. I'm quite tall.
Congratulations to you. You've never gotten I thought you'd be taller. Because I have gotten that multiple times over the course of my radio career. And I've been in a lot of different places and a lot of different kinds of people, and people in lots of different places have heard my voice. And I've gotten more than once. I thought you'd be taller. I'm 5'10", for whatever it's worth to anyone. I am 50th percentile of average American male height.
We have a texter who says, called a face made for radio for a reason. I once had a teacher who told me I had a face for radio. I think they were trying to be nice and say face for TV, because I had made a really self-deprecating joke in a class. So like, yeah, you do have a face for radio. It's like, hey, thanks. Not quite realizing what they had said until too late. It was actually very funny. But you can check us out again on YouTube at Sports on 580 WIBW. By the way, to that point, not gonna lie, because I met my wife. I met her on Tinder.
Yes.
Very modern day love story.
Yes,
right?
that you and me both.
I'm not gonna lie. I was one of the guys that put my height in my profile, at least at one point.
Of course you were.
Of course.
If I were 6'4", I would have too.
It's a gift. It's nothing I can control. It's like, well, you might not like everything after you learn this, but at least you'll know that.
I had to rely on my natural good looks and charm. I couldn't.
Now, see, I don't have that to fall back on.
See, yeah, that's what I've got. Who needs height?
I like that approach. Yeah, I mean, hey, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. It worked out. I'm married now, so how can you complain about that? Coming up here in this 4 o'clock hour, we'll get to the Royals and their new manager, Matt Quatraro, in just a moment. We've got our October championship in What Is Wrong With You? My bleach tastes like Pepsi Cola versus the charred chicken complaint. And the Big 12's got a new media deal. And was Bob Bowlesby wrong or incompetent? We're going to get to that coming up at the bottom of the hour. Brett Yormark, awesome at his job. Maybe we will feel differently a few years from now when it's like $900 to get into like 4 minutes of the Big 12 tournament and everything is held in New York City for some reason or some other nonsense. But for now, really look what Brett Yormark is doing for the Big 12 conference. So we'll get to that later on in the hour. But it was announced officially yesterday, the Kansas City Royals have their new manager. It is Matt Quatraro, who has been around baseball for a long time. He was a draft pick in 1996 of the then Tampa Bay Devil Rays. Was a minor leaguer for 7 years, never made it past AAA with Tampa. He was a catcher. The Royals love former catchers, just adore them.
Yes, they do. Mike Matheny, Ned Yost, Sean Wathan. How far back do you want to go?
As far back as we want. I saw somebody tweet this. I wish I could give credit to it. It was passing on my Twitter timeline yesterday. Looking forward to Salvador Perez in 2030 becoming the manager of the Kansas City Royals.
Man, me too.
Yeah, I mean, no reason to think it wouldn't work.
Put that in the universe. I'm fine with that. The press conferences would be terrific.
Oh, they'd be tremendous every single time. But he has been a very successful assistant coach in Major League Baseball for several years now. 2014 was the assistant hitting coach for a few years for the Cleveland, then Indians, now Guardians, including being an assistant for Terry Francona's World Series staff in 2016. Right after that, he became the third base coach and eventually the bench coach in Tampa with Kevin Cash, and again, coached in a World Series in 2020. This is a guy who has been an assistant hitting coach. Obviously knows what he's doing hitting-wise. He's been a bench coach, which is generally like the assistant manager to a degree. That's not a perfect description, but I think roughly that's kind of what bench coach is considered to be by the masses. Usually when a manager gets tossed, the bench coach takes over as the acting manager.
Right.
I don't have Kevin Cash's ejection numbers in front of me, but I'm sure Quatrero has at least a little bit of experience with that. And he was a catcher. He knows pitching. He knows what it takes to get good pitching out of someone, to maximize pitching. I'm not saying all of that is guaranteed. Oh, he checks these 3 boxes, guaranteed all-time great manager for the Royals. I'm just saying he's at least dabbled in a bunch of different things. He brings that experience. And here's the other thing that stood out to me from the very beginning when his name came up, because I'm not going to lie and say, oh, yeah, Matt Quatrero, I've known about him since, his days in Double-A back in the year 2000. No, I had very little knowledge of who this man was when the Royals managerial first start. Maybe I'll get this right eventually. Managerial search first started. This is a guy who is coming from 2 organizations, one that have developed pitching extremely well. We talked all season long about how well Cleveland develops their pitching. Tristan McKenzie was a great example of that. Many others, obviously, good examples of that. They've been very good at that. Tampa, also, somewhat different approach that, oh, your ERA is over 1.6 as a reliever, you're trash, get out of here. And they just have the most nameless, faceless guys ever, but they dominate out of the pen. They did the opener stuff. Their starters have been very good, generally speaking. 2 teams that have developed pitchers really well. 2 teams that have found a lot of success. 2 teams that have been, quote-unquote, data-driven in recent regimes or current regimes since he has been there. What did John Sherman say when Dayton Moore got fired? He thought that that group in the front office, led by Dayton Moore, did not do the most with the data that was at hand for them. They did not maximize the information and data that was at hand. You're now bringing in a guy who, for his majority of his major league and minor league experience, has been around programs that have been very data driven. And I don't want to say analytics minded, because I know that's just kind of a mean, a nasty buzzword now, but they are driven by more of those things and making the smart decision based on a lot of factors other than just feel and, oh, well, this is how it's always been done. I think that's a good approach for the Royals. I think it's a forward thinking approach for the Royals and who they brought in.
So the big question with this and any other managerial hire in this day and age in baseball is, what exactly does a manager do? What exactly is the job of the manager of the Kansas City Royals? Because I think that is a different question than what is the job of the manager of the Tampa Bay Rays, or what is the job of the manager of the New York Yankees, or what is the job of the manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Like, the job of being a manager is different based upon the circumstances, where the team is at in the standings, what they're trying to do. Are they trying to move up the standings? Are they trying to rebuild? Are they trying to make a leap as an organization? And how do they want to do it? How analytically driven are they? How much are they reliant on the numbers? And I think that it's instructive to look at the managers that Quatrero has worked with.
Mm-hmm.
In Cleveland, he worked with Terry Francona. And Terry Francona has had success both in an era where the manager had much more input on the day-to-day decisions and how his team is put together. And he has had success in this modern game where, and I can't speak to this directly, how much Cleveland is like this relative to other organizations, but it is not uncommon now for general managers to have more say or the guys who are in the analytics department to have more say in, hey, we're going to play this guy. Hey, you're going to shift like this. Hey, you're not going to use these relievers, or you're not going to use this pitcher for more than X number of pitches. But Terry Francona's had success in different organizations, in different circumstances, with different kinds of teams. He's one of the great managers of all time. I think Terry Francona belongs in the Hall of Fame when all is said and done. And over the last couple of years, Quatraro has worked with Kevin Cash in Tampa Bay. Kevin Cash, if he is famous for any managerial decision, what would that be? Do you remember, Brendan?
He's famous for any managerial decision.
Let me take you back to the 2020 World Series.
Is it
taking Blake Snell out of the game early?
All right. I thought that, but I didn't want to sound dumb and be wrong.
No, I understand.
No,
I understand.
Yeah.
I was trying to lead you in that direction.
That was a very forgettable baseball season for a lot of really the most memorable part of that season, I guess fittingly, was the World Series because it was actually fun and you had some breakout stars.
You had that wild Game 3, and then they let Justin Turner play the clinching game and celebrate with his teammates while he was actively contagious with COVID-19.
Back when we still were like, what's going to happen? Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, not an all-time memorable World Series, but if anybody remembers anything from it outside of Brett Phillips' game-winning whatever that was in Game 3 of that series, it was Kevin Cash's decision to take Blake Snell out of a game and he was pitching, and he had thrown 5 shutout innings, and he got pulled very early in that game, and the Rays bullpen went on to blow that game and lose it. That was not a decision Kevin Cash had in his head. That was a decision that the numbers told Kevin Cash to make. And Kevin Cash made the decision and would stand by it based upon, this is what the stats say. This is what the research says. This is what the data says about Blake Snell, about him the third time through the order. I made the decision that he made the decision in that moment that he could live with, and that organization essentially demands that he make. So it's two very different philosophies. Terry Francona is not yanking Blake Snell in that spot, probably. Kevin Cash had no other choice. So this is where Matt Quatraro comes from. He has worked with two very different managers, two very disparate backgrounds. And what kind of organization are the Royals going to be moving forward? Are they going to look more like the Rays? Is their general manager going to have an office in the clubhouse? Is J.J. Piccolo going to have an office? Is J.J. Piccolo going to sit down? This blew my mind. I was reading a book excerpt from Joe Maddon's new book. Speaking of old school managers.
Yeah.
Joe Maddon in Los Angeles, that went south in a hurry for him with the Angels this year, culminating in his being fired pretty early on in the 2022 season. But Joe Maddon's general manager had an office and was meeting with the players on an individual basis every day. Like, that's how hands-on general managers are now. That's how hands-on the analytic community is now with baseball players. And there are some organizations that have done that and had a great deal of success with them. Tampa Bay being one of them. Is that J.J. Piccolo's style? Because if that's his style, Matt Quatraro is going to have an understanding of, okay, this is where this is coming from. This is how I can best handle myself. I had a model of this with Kevin Cash. If the Royals are going to be informed but not entirely driven by analytical information, informed by but not run by data 100%, then he has a great model of that, having worked with Terry Francona. Either way, he's going to get to find his own lane, but I think his disparate backgrounds and the guys that he has worked with over the course of his baseball career put him in position to be successful as a manager and put him in position to be the kind of manager who is receptive to analytics and information and able to use them, but also understanding that sometimes you got to be a human being. And sometimes you got to manage the 26 guys in your dugout like they're humans and not numbers on a spreadsheet. I think sometimes organizations get too far in that direction.
Agreed.
The Padres are a great example of this. The Padres are very analytically minded right now. They put a gym teacher in charge of their baseball team, a guy named Jace Tingler, who was their minor league player development head and had never managed at any level. They made him their manager. And unsurprisingly, it didn't go super great.
No.
Like, the Padres, they weren't doing anything. With all that talent, they weren't achieving what anybody would have expected them to achieve. This year, they go hire Bob Melvin. And Bob Melvin's not a dummy. Bob Melvin used to manage in Oakland. He knows a little bit about, you want to talk about being in the birthplace of Moneyball, right? But Bob Melvin had success there, but Bob Melvin has never been considered a guy who is a slave to the numbers, who is going to remove a pitcher from a game or pinch hit for a guy because a formula told him to do it. He manages with that human touch. That's a lot more what Bob Melvin is known for. And look where he got the Padres, 3 wins away from a World Series, which only 2 other managers in the history of that godforsaken organization have ever gotten them close. Okay, so put a human being in charge, give him information, and look what happens to the San Diego Padres. I think that's the hope with Quatraro, that he can blend his background, having worked with a guy like Terry Francona, and his background, having worked in an organization like Tampa Bay, and sort of fuse that into the vision for the future of the Kansas City Royals. That's why I'm excited about his hiring.
I was going to say, to that very last point right there, because I know you were at least fairly in tune with a handful of the names that were being brought up, realistic names for this job. Where did Quatraro land in relation to what you wanted for this team?
He would have been very high on my list.
Okay.
If not at the very top.
Okay.
In terms of, I thought the best thing for the Royals to do, go relatively young, which Quatraro's 48.
Absolutely.
Go relatively young, go with a first-time manager. Don't bring me a retread. Don't bring me another Mike Matheny. You tried that and it didn't work. And bring me somebody with, I always believe that guys who come from winning organizations bring good habits from winning organizations. And he has been with 2 organizations that have won consistently. And another thing that they've done that Kansas City is going to have to try and do because of where they stand in the financial food chain in Major League Baseball, they've won without a whole lot of resources. The Rays and the Guardians have won without spending a ton of money. They have won because their young players have gotten to the major leagues and produced at a high level faster than a lot of other teams managed to get their young players to perform at. So, yeah, he would have been, I can't swear he'd have been number 1 on my list, but he might have been. I mean, of the guys that they interviewed, he was one that definitely jumped off the page, given his background, that seems like a really good fit for the Royals moving forward.
Yeah, I think so too. That's the same kind of direction I wanted to go. I agree on the retread thing. I mean, there's just, what would that have given you? This at least gives you some potential. I know it's a first-time managerial thing, but again, he's got the background. The biggest thing for me is, can he relate to young guys and work well with young players?
I know for sure he can relate with one young player because he, like Vinny Pasquantino, is an alumnus of Old Dominion University.
Well, how about that? Go Monarchs. Yeah, in fact, I do believe I saw last night while I was putting together the piece for our website, now580wibw.com, that he was recently inducted into the Old Dominion Hall of Fame. Semi-recently, anyway.
Yes, that is correct.
So good for him.
But he's a history major like me, so I like the guy even more now.
How about that? I think as long as you can get a guy who is going to help get the most out of your young pieces, and I do feel like that is something that Quatraro has the background to be capable of doing. It's not like Tampa Bay has been a retirement home in recent years. It's been very much built on a bunch of young dudes with a couple of veterans sprinkled in to get the most out of what they have. I think that is going to be the most important thing for this group. Now, it is also going to be important to find out who he brings in as his assistant coaches. Do you bring in like a random name? Total, I don't, this is not a report or anything. Like, hey, we need someone who's been around the block, and I want someone who is super experienced. I'm going to go hire Mike Maddox as my pitching coach. Like, does that make sense? Do they want to, because he just stepped down with the Cardinals. Do you want to go and bring in, a bunch of other guys who are very similar, young, maybe haven't had that position before, but have been in other similar places, maybe have been in the minors as pitching coordinators? I'm very curious what that's going to look like, because I think that will also, and if in general, kind of give us a view of where they want to head with the team.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, 2 organizations that have done a wonderful job developing pitching. If he's going with guys he knows, people he's worked with, people he can get recommendations from, whether they're from Cleveland or Tampa Bay or have worked with those organizations previously, I got to imagine he'll be able to find somebody who comes in, because it's not just the major league pitching coach that needs to be addressed. It is the organizational pitching development that needs to be addressed. And maybe you build that from the bottom up, and the pitching coach is not the first hire that you make, the major league pitching coach. You hire a pitching coordinator, director of pitching development, much like Alex Zumwalt was kind of the director of hitting development for the Royals before he ultimately became the major league hitting coach or was promoted and moved into a dugout role this last year. But that is going to be important. And again, Quatraro has that background with organizations who have been very, very good at that over the years. I thought it was fascinating. The word that Jeff Passan used in regards to Quatraro and his reputation in the game is adored. That was from Passan's tweet last night announcing the hiring. He's adored among players, coaches, and execs, and is regarded as the ideal type to shepherd the Royals' young core. You do need, with a young group, it would not have made sense to bring in a hard case. One of those classic baseball red asses who's going to get in an umpire's face or going to get in a player's face, like a Joe Girardi or something like that. Yeah. When you think of guys like that wouldn't have made any kind of sense. You need a soft touch to guide these guys through the still nascent days of their playing careers. And a young manager in his own right, a first-time major league manager like Quatraro, again, seems like an ideal fit. We have no idea how it will go. Like, maybe he's got a lot of Nathaniel Hackett in him and forgets that there are 3 outs in an inning, or screws up the 3-batter rule one time and costs his team a game. We don't know. We don't know what it's going to look like when the rubber meets the road. But in terms of characteristics, in terms of background, in terms of, I think, youth and experience level, this feels like a really, really good fit.
There's reason to be excited, and I think that's the most important thing from a fan perspective. Like, yeah, no, this sounds cool. This sounds like a good fit. I hope
because
it works.
who was juiced about Mike Matheny?
No, literally no one.
Right.
Like, we were hard on that, but most people are like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, I guess. Sure. This actually seems like, okay, they're going in a different direction. They're going with youth. They're going with the analytically driven stuff. It's different. It's a change. He's been with successful teams. He has been a successful assistant. I think it's a great direction for the Royals to go in. Really do. We'll take a timeout here on 580 Sports Talk. If you have any thoughts on the Matt Quatraro hire, let us know on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is that text line number. Don't forget, we are now live streaming on YouTube at Sports on 580 WIBW. Look it up on YouTube. Subscribe. Favorite the page. We'll be live streaming every day. We're also live streaming on Twitter at Sports on 580. Let's take a timeout. When we come back, the October Championship in What Is Wrong With You right here on 580 Sports Talk.
What the hell?
What the hell?
What the hell is right? It's time to find our champion for the month of October in What Is Wrong With You. We've got two great stories, I think, that are going head-to-head today. Story number one of these was yours, one of these was mine, Dan. So why don't we have you go through your story, named, well, the nickname I gave it anyway, for a very odd line in a Lana Del Rey song, My Bleach Tastes Like Pepsi-Cola.
So we go to DeLand, Florida, the land of rich, what is wrong with you stories.
Yes, a treasure trove over the years.
We meet Jerome Ellis, who worked at a Dollar General and had a dispute with one of his coworkers and decided that the best way for him to solve that dispute would be to pour bleach into his coworker's can of Pepsi. Ellis and the victim reportedly got in an argument the day before, and the victim told police he believed Ellis was holding a grudge against him. I believe his first clue was the bleach in his Pepsi. The man told deputies he placed his Pepsi on a counter before he went into the restroom. When he came back and took a drink, it tasted like bleach or cleaning supplies. When deputies arrived at the store, video surveillance showed Ellis pouring bleach into the Pepsi can. He also reportedly wiped the can off, walked away, had second thought, said, I don't know if bleach was enough, and he spit in the can of Pepsi. Ellis initially told deputies there was no argument between him and the victim. He's making the whole thing up. I went behind the counter with some cleaning solution and spilled some in that general area. Maybe he just smelled it, or maybe it got on there by accident. But then he was confronted with more video footage that not only showed him putting bleach in the Pepsi, but also attempting to unplug the surveillance camera system. Ellis told deputies eventually that he put some cleaning solution around the brim of the drink to get back at the victim for being difficult to work with. He was booked into the Volusia County Jail and has been arrested on charges of poisoning food or water and tampering with evidence, presumably for trying to unplug the video cameras.
That's so funny. That's the part that gets me the most. Like, it's what is wrong with you regardless, but the part where he's trying to unplug the cameras is just so good. That's my favorite part of that.
It really is. It's such a perfect detail. From the Big O Tires text line, 785 asks if that would have turned the Pepsi clear.
That's a great question.
Don't believe so. Did you ever have Crystal Pepsi?
No, but I don't drink pop.
That's right. Yeah. I remember when they brought it back real briefly, like 6-7 years ago, I want to say it was.
Was it even that long ago?
I'm trying to remember.
I thought it was more recently than that.
I think it was when I was living in, I measure time by where I happened to be living at the time because I've moved around so much. I think it was when I was living in Northeast Colorado. So it would have had to have been 2015, maybe 2016.
They also, oh no, this was just a contest this year. They gave away some Crystal Pepsi.
Couldn't sell it, apparently.
They also re-released it in 2015, and in 2016 brought it out again for a limited time.
I just remember it tasting it like a mixture of like Pepsi and Sprite. But I think the Sprite taste was probably like your brain playing tricks on you because that's what it looks like.
That's like the people who go to a drink machine, the drinking fountain.
The suicide, yeah.
Put different things in it. Is that what you called it?
Yeah, we called it the suicide.
I don't remember what people called it where I grew up. Again, I never did it. I was like, oh yeah, can you get me water? So I never did that.
You blended water with lemonade.
Oh yeah, give me that watery lemonade. Hell yeah.
Water, lemonade, some iced tea. Is iced tea a little too bold for you?
I don't know how often this has actually come up on the show. I know we're getting off topic here. There's like very few things that I drink. I guess I'm a really picky like drinker, but I don't drink alcohol, for other reasons. I don't drink pop. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink tea. I drink like milk, 2%, fruit juices, and lemonade. That's like it. So like I'll go home tonight. I don't know what we're having for dinner, but what I'm having, I will probably be drinking water with it or nothing. I will often eat dinner with no beverage.
I do that too. Sometimes like I'll eat and then I'll go get a drink afterwards.
Yeah. It's like, oh, well, now I'm thirsty.
I do that too. That's not weird. I'm not even gonna dunk on you for the 2% milk thing because that's the kind of milk I drink too. I don't drink a ton of it. I'm not Jim Harbaugh over here, but
yeah, drinking milk with your steak or whatever.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm not a very picky eater. I don't think I am at all. But beverages, like you can count the number on one hand. I would not have consumed this bleach-filled Pepsi or Crystal Pepsi or anything else with Pepsi in it.
What if somebody had put bleach in your lemonade?
Well, then I would have a problem.
There you go.
I would have a big problem with that. Our other finalist for the month of October, the charred chicken complaint. A 49-year-old named Chofel Norbu in Queens, New York, went to an Indian restaurant and ordered chicken biryani, which I never heard of before, but it actually sounds pretty good. Well, his order came out wrong, and he was very upset about this. How upset was he? He decided to burn the restaurant down. He left the restaurant, came back after it was closed, metal bars over the window like you see in a lot of places in New York, and he threw some sort of flammable liquid on the window, and it did seep into the restaurant. It also, as you can imagine, splashed off the window and pooled back underneath him, standing right outside. Well, he lit that flammable liquid on fire. And guess what happens? He also lit himself on fire. There is video courtesy of 4 News New York, the NBC affiliate in New York City. He just bursts into a big fireball. He truly lights himself on fire.
He does.
Ablaze. And it is incredible. It looks like the Human Torch running away from the building. He was eventually caught. There were security cameras all over. He's been charged with arson, criminal mischief, and reckless endangerment. He lit himself on fire because his chicken biryani came out wrong. Just an unreal overreaction. You messed up my order. I'm going to burn down your restaurant. And then for the slapstick element, he lit himself on fire.
Like, it wasn't like he did it in a fit of pique. Again, it's not like he devised a device that would engulf the restaurant in flames while he was there. No, presumably he went home, had a think, thought to himself, I have been deeply insulted. I am so mad about this that I'm going to give them a taste of their own medicine. You burn my food, I burn your restaurant down. And he procured the elements necessary, and he went back to the restaurant, and he deliberately got the lighter fluid all over the place and deliberately lit that match and went up in flames like the Human Torch. And I can't imagine that was worth it.
No! Oh, congrats on your first-degree burns. Also jail time and a large fine, probably. We have one texter from the 785 who says, Burning Man for the win. Burning Man. That's pretty good. Another texter from the 785 who says, I'm with you, Brendan. I haven't drank alcohol in at least 26 hours.
Hey.
That got a laugh out of me. Who you got for our October champion? These are two good stories.
Man, I hate that we're losing one of these stories, and that only one of them can exit the Thunderdome and be a part of our December Tournament of Champions. But gosh, I'm at a loss because I really like both of these for very different reasons.
I agree. I will go first then, because this man lit himself on fire because his order was wrong at a restaurant. There is only one step between those two things in this story.
You ever been so mad you light yourself on fire?
Amazingly, no, I have not. Order comes out wrong. What does the normal person do? They either just eat it because they don't want the confrontation. That's probably what I would do. Or they say, hey, this is wrong.
Hey,
please bring it back out.
Can you do this again? This is all wrong. I'm not really feeling this. Most restaurants will do that. They want you to have a good experience because they want you to come back.
This guy, so those are options A and B. This guy went down to like option W and said, you know what? I'm just going to light the place on fire. And then he lit himself on fire because he splashed the flammable liquid off the building back on himself.
It's not like he walked out and saw like 2 packages, one that said lighter fluid and another that said matches, and he was still so incensed that he made the snap decision to do this.
Man, we've got some pyros on the Big O Tires text line today. From the 785, Flamer Boy for sure. Another one says, Dan is wrong. Fire, fire, fire. Like Beavis and Butthead.
From the 316, we have a vote for the idiot flambe. All right.
I think that's the new name if we keep it. Idiot flambe is the new name.
I think that wins me over. I mean, the fact he went to his house, presumably, or somewhere. He left the restaurant. He had time to cool down. He had time to let the insult pass. the moment slide by and continue on with his life without multiple burns and a felony charge. He had an opportunity with the sliding doors moment, but no, he couldn't let it go.
785 texter says, send the food back or say, bleep it, light the place up. Yeah, that's this guy's thought process.
He lit it up all right. Yeah, he wins.
Idiot Flambe. That's a great name. Shout out to our texter
Really
from the
good.
785, or I'm sorry, from the 316 who sent that one in. That is a great name, and that is our October champion in What Is Wrong With You. That one's got some juice. That one's got some real legs for our end of the year tournament of failed champions. With that, we're going to take a time out here on 580 Sports Talk. When we come back, the Big 12 getting paid. That's next on the show. Back on 580 Sports Talk, 446 on this Monday afternoon. Make sure to go check out the YouTube at Sports on 580 WIBW. Just look it up. You can see our beautiful faces every single day. We have a texter from the 316 who says, you're going to have to work on a text of the day giveaway. Say autographed of the top of Dan's head and Brendan's torso.
Hey, that's not going to be the text of the day. I'll tell you that right damn now. That's rude.
Not very nice. Oh, man.
It's funny, though.
It is very funny.
It's funny.
Harsh, but fair and very
Not
funny.
fair. No, I'm 5'10". That's average.
That's not that short.
It's not. Not out here like Muggsy Bogues. Come on.
This happened, I think, we're just, being funny at home, but there are times when, like, I'll stand up and I'll give Abby a hug and she'll go, you're really tall. Yes, I'm aware. I have been told that a time or two. She's not short by any means. She's like 5'8". Also, same texture adds, Brendan must have a shirt on the torso. Trust me, I don't want to see it just like you don't want to see it.
No.
It will be fully clothed. I
No,
promise
we will
you.
not be doing. We will not be doing. Any shirtless
No.
appearances
Ugh.
on the YouTube.
No, absolutely not. The Big 12 is going to get paid by ESPN and Fox. The Sports Business Journal originally reported this weekend the base terms of the new agreement between the Big 12 and its media partners for its Tier 1 rights. The previous deal with ESPN and Fox was granting each member school in the Big 12 in the neighborhood of $20 million a year. And that's not including the Tier 2 rights, the Tier 3. Those are the ones that go to ESPN Plus. Previously, individual schools had their own, and they all pulled together ESPN Plus. A lot of business stuff we don't need to get into. The new deal for the Big 12, again, that's $20 million a school. And I know that was several years ago now, and times change. Money obviously keeps going up. But that was with Oklahoma and Texas. And Bob Bowlesby said less than a year ago, or just about a year ago, that the Big 12's value for its next media deal would likely be halved or more without having Oklahoma and Texas.
He wasn't the only one to predict this, by the way. Stuart Mandel thought it was reasonable to expect that the Big 12's deal might look like what the American Athletic Conference is currently getting.
Yeah, we're smoking that Mandel pack today.
Yes.
Because the Big 12's new deal without Oklahoma, without Texas, will grant each school in the neighborhood of $31.7 million annually. And again, that is before the Tier 2 money. That is before the Tier 3 money, which it sounds like, I know people are going to be upset about this, it's going to stay with ESPN Plus. So let's just get that out of the way. ESPN actually reported that. Pete Thamel, their new insider, he's been at Yahoo for a long time now, he's at ESPN, said that, yeah, it's probably going to stay on ESPN Plus.
But you pointed this out. If that's where it stays, Big 12 fans are used to that by now. And it's one service that for now is pretty reasonably priced. Wait, $6.99 still?
It might have gone up, but there's tons of bundles and whatnot.
It started at $5 I think it's
really
gone up
deal,
to $5.99 or $6.99 or whatever it is now. And then, you can get it with the Hulu and Disney Plus bundle, so your kids can watch like Disney stuff. Or I have Disney Plus literally just so I have access to the Simpsons archive.
Fair enough.
But anyhow, like you can get it discounted or whatever it is. But that's where it's all going to be. Like you're not going to have to shell out $6 extra a month for Paramount Plus.
Or
you're not going to have to shell out 10 a month for Peacock. Yeah.
Or Amazon Prime or Apple TV Plus or something else like that.
It's something that you probably already have and are familiar with, even if you don't like it, even if you're still complaining or grumbling about it, even if it's not convenient for you at all times. I understand lots of very valid criticisms about ESPN Plus. I'm not here to refute any of those, to be company man for ESPN Plus, but it will remain the only thing that you have to watch maybe one or two other games a year, or a bunch of the Olympic sports, or a handful of the non-conference basketball games. And I think that matters.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it saves you, the consumer, maybe a little bit of money. Because what if you're a Big 10 fan and you don't want Peacock and Paramount Plus?
Tough beans.
Yeah.
You're getting both. The other thing, too, for the three American Athletic Conference schools, and we'll get to more on them in a second, they didn't have to change anything either, because the American had a lot of content on ESPN Plus, more than the Big 12 for all of their other sports, basketball especially. Most of it, I think, was on ESPN Plus over the last couple of years. So that doesn't change. And in a world where everything seems to be changing, the Big 12 getting more money and getting to stay on the same networks and the same single streaming service, honestly, I think that's a huge win.
It's a win for stability. And I think that at the end of the day, that was still the most important objective for Brett Yormark in negotiating this deal, and for the 8 remaining Big 12 schools who were going to be left behind by Oklahoma and Texas before they welcomed in the 4 newcomers. Stability was still the most important thing, and that's what this contract offers. Stability and a consistent and higher than before revenue stream. I think it's a really big deal in that regard. It's a win, and it got done before the Pac-12, who had a 1-year head start on this stuff. At least a few months in terms of when their negotiating window opened. And yet they're still hunting, and they don't quite know what their value is going to be when USC and UCLA leave the league. And maybe their batty commissioner still thinks that UCLA or USC is going to have a change of heart, and they're not going to leave the league. I'm hearing they're not all that happy about it. George, they're going to get one check, and they're going to be extremely happy about it.
Yeah, best of luck wishing for that. So a great job, I think, by Brett Yormark to get this done, to get a good deal. This is also going to include, so ESPN is going to get preference for, I believe it's the top 4 Big 12 games of the year, because the networks essentially draft games that they want, and it depends on how many games they get preference for and all that. ESPN is going to get preference for 12 of the top 20 Big 12 games of the season. So your biggest matchups are going to end up on the ESPN family of stations. And to be honest with you, as much as people complain about ESPN, I'm entirely fine with them getting more games. Fox's production quality for college football is so bad. So bad. They get graphics wrong all the time, stats wrong all the time. They employ Tim Brando, which is enough to say they're already down the tube in comparison. I get the complaints about ESPN. I've got no problem with them getting more football. Basketball, though, this is interesting. More games going to Fox. So I don't know what that's going to do. Is that games that would have regularly just been on ESPN? Are they games that maybe were on CBS before that are now just going to be on Fox? Or are they games that were on ESPN Plus before that are now being moved to Fox? Because, I don't know, but I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, like, 1 or 2 fewer non-conference games ending up on ESPN Plus and ending up on FS1. Like,
awesome.
Yeah, that feels like a win.
Huge win for FS1's in a lot of households nowadays.
Plus, now there is the possibility of the Sunflower Showdown called by Gus Johnson.
Which rules. That is awesome.
Give me that, please.
So awesome. I actually like the people that Fox employs for their basketball. I like them a lot. That's a big win right there. Here's the other one. One final note I've got on this. A bigger winner than the rest of the conference, which I think the remaining 8, the hateful 8, if you will, I think they come out looking great here because
they do.
Tier 2 and Tier 3 and the bowl payouts and all that, we're going to get $50 million a year. That's great. The fans, hey, you don't have to change whatever networks you're watching. That's great. BYU, their money is different. They got Mormon money. That's different. It's private. That happens.
Right.
But the 3 schools from the American, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston, those 3 were added because they found success in multiple sports, but because they're committed to their athletic department.
And now what have they done? Quadrupled their money?
More than that. Their Tier 1 deal with the American, with ESPN, $7 million a year. So they are going from $7 million a year to now like 4.5 times that much with this new Tier 1 deal with ESPN and Fox. You bring in everything else, they're going to increase their annual revenue from media nearly 7-fold. They were already committed to success and to contributing to their athletic department. Now they're getting that much more money, and they've already found success even among the big guys. That's huge. Those programs are going to make out like bandits.
Yeah, it's going to make their programs better, too, which makes the league stronger.
That's awesome. This is such great news for everybody involved with the Big 12. We've got to take a break for the top of the hour news. We'll come back. We've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines, and we'll look back on the football weekend right here on 580 Sports Talk. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside. Come inside. Shout out to the Electric Light Orchestra, and shout out to you for joining us on this Monday Halloween edition of 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. We are with you for the next hour here on the program. Thank you for spending some of your afternoon hours with us. If you have missed any of the show today, you can head on over to our website, 580wibw.com. That's right. In case you missed it earlier, brand new URL for us, 580wibw.com. And from there, it's all the same as it's always been. Podcast tab right in the middle of the page underneath the logo. Hover over that. Click on 580 Sports Talk. You will find the hour-by-hour podcast breakdown of the show in case you missed any of it today. Or, you know what you can do now? Since we've been live streaming the entire show on our YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW, when we're done, or right now, you can rewind on YouTube. It's great. You can head to YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of our channel, where we're going to live stream every show, 580 Sports Talk and Mic'd Up every single day. Mic'd Up starting tomorrow. Sports Talk, obviously, right now. You can go watch the show back anytime. You don't want to go to the podcast page? Fine. Go to YouTube instead. Multiple ways now to interact with us during the show, after the show. Of course, you can still hit us up on the Big O Tires text line as well. There's a comment section on YouTube. You can't get enough of us.
You can finally watch words come out of our mouths as we say them.
You can just kind of stare into them like the abyss.
Long you have imagined, what sort of gross shapes do their mouths make when they say words? And now you can see for yourself on YouTube.
Can I make an odd comment? I mean, like every day, but you know who makes really weird shapes with their mouth? I know this because my sister is a super fan of this guy, John Mayer. John Mayer is like probably pretty talented, also like a total creep, but he makes real weird movements with his mouth when he talks or when he sings. It's very odd. We don't do that. We look much more normal when we speak. Coming up here in this 5 o'clock hour of the show, we'll get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. We will also get to a recap of what was a busy Sunday in the NFL, and we'll look ahead to Monday Night Football tonight between the Bengals and the Browns. And we'll look back on some of the highlights from the college football weekend, too. Of course, we'll take your texts on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. And, of course, we need to get to this text as well to start things off from our texter who is asking for the mismatch picture of us with my torso and your head, which I think is insulting to your height and maybe to my face. I'm not entirely sure. They say, I can see it now. Brendan with an I was a volleyball stud shirt and Dan with a Let's Go Gino hat, which I can't lie is that'd
be fire funny. If they're selling any of those. Maybe I'll have to buy one.
Yeah, honestly, that's a good piece of even if he's never this good ever again, it's great to have those pieces of memorabilia from moments in time. Like anyone who has a Lynn Sanity shirt, keep that forever. Frame that. Like that is the coolest thing you own. No, because people won't get it. There's a reason they're making a documentary about it or made a documentary about it. So yeah, I would wear that shirt. Although then when people ask like, oh, did you play for Team USA? No, I played on my JV team when I was in high school and I was pretty good. Like, oh, now you just kind of look like a loser. Like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess. Let's get to the headlines here. Our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. You can go check them out online at bluedotkansas.com. First headline for me, we had a big trade today. We are now just 22 hours, less than 22 hours, from the NFL trade deadline. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock Arrowhead time. And the Chicago Bears made a massive move, sending somewhat disgruntled linebacker Roquan Smith to the Baltimore Ravens in exchange for a second-round pick, a fifth-round pick, and veteran linebacker A.J. Klein, who I believe is in his first, maybe second year with the Ravens. He had previously been with the New Orleans Saints for a long time, among others. Smith had some issues during the offseason. He wanted to get paid. The Bears wouldn't commit to it. He was going to hold out of camp, decided to show up, made it very clear he was not going to get paid by the Bears, because if he was, they would have kept him because he's that good of a player. I believe I saw from Aaron Schatz of Football Outsiders, they have a metric, defensive stops, which is more than just tackles. It's essentially when a defensive player makes a play that prevents a successful offensive play. That sounds like a lot of word salad, but it's essentially like a step above just a basic tackle. That's essentially what it comes down to. He leads the league in that category. He is a very good player. I think this is a win for both sides. The Bears are trying to dump as much salary as possible. They clearly weren't bringing him back anyway. They want to get as many picks as possible, and they have a bunch of them for next year. Meanwhile, the Ravens, they're in very much win now mode. Who cares about a second and a fifth? Whatever. They draft great players all over the draft all the time. They need help on their defense. Their linebacker core, not very good right now. Their entire defense is not all that good right now. So I think it makes sense for both teams. And that's, again, another huge name. He's been a really good player. Matt Verderame mentioned it earlier, not a Pro Bowler. That's still a hell of a player. And now you've got a year in which Christian McCaffrey has been moved. You've got Roquan Smith, who has been moved. You've got multiple other starting caliber players who have been moved. This is the most fun NFL trade deadline ever. Christian McCaffrey had a passing, rushing, and receiving touchdown yesterday.
Yeah,
it was incredible.
Yeah, that was a, oh no, the Death Star is operational kind of moment for McCaffrey and the 49ers offense yesterday.
And we asked that question when the trade happened. Like, okay, in theory, cool, but they get production out of every one of their running backs before they inevitably get hurt. Like, what is the ceiling? Is it a permanent ceiling of pretty good, or can a truly great player take it up a notch? I think we found the answer yesterday.
They didn't have Debo and they didn't have Kyle Juszczyk, and they said, hey, Christian, be our whole offense. And Christian was like, bet.
Okay.
Here, watch me throw one, too. Watch me throw a better deep ball than Jimmy G.
First player since LaDainian Tomlinson. Yeah, that's true. He is their QB1. I, as well as about a million other people, said that at the exact same time on Twitter yesterday. That is, the second time he's ever had the triple threat, the triple crown of touchdowns. He's the first player to do it since LaDainian Tomlinson. That's pretty good company to be in. So another big trade in the NFL. This has been, again, one of the most fun trade deadlines maybe ever in the NFL. And I'm kind of here for it. Makes me think we're going to get even more action between now and 3 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting these next, I guess not 24 hours, 22 hours, 21 and change now to see what else develops. I feel like a second and a fifth is a bit steep for Roquan Smith. I don't think he makes the kind of impact that like a star pass rusher would.
It's perfect you bring that up because the Bears traded Khalil Mack, older, has had a couple injuries recently. They got a second and a sixth for him from a better, well, let me rephrase, a team that had higher expectations or equally as high expectations going into the year in the Chargers versus the Ravens. So they got more for Smith than they got for Mack, which is kind of crazy because Max played pretty well.
Yeah, and I just think a player like that is more impactful than a linebacker in the modern NFL. But
agreed. He's
a really good player. And for so many years, the Ravens' defensive identity was about having great linebackers. Like they had Ray Lewis, but they had a lot of really good one. Peter Boulware was a great player. They had great linebackers for a long time. And it feels like they haven't had that guy in a few years. So it's sort of like, honestly, like when the Bears have a good linebacker, it feels right when the Bears have a Roquan Smith or a Brian Urlacher, what was the guy's name? Harris, the other Lance Briggs. Lance Briggs is who I'm thinking of. Guys like that on teams like that just fit.
Mm-hmm.
Roquan Smith as a Baltimore Raven fits. Like it feels right.
I agree with that. For sure. So hopefully we're going to get some more news. And of course, when it breaks tomorrow, they'll cover it live on Mic'd Up, and we'll have reaction after 3 o'clock tomorrow here on 580 Sports Talk.
First headline for me, we had another in-season firing of a college football coach. It did not take long.
Although this might have been the most telegraphed, obvious one of them all. Maybe below Scott Frost, but not below any of these other guys.
I don't know if you've ever woke up expecting bad news every day for 10 weeks. But I think Brian Harsin did.
Yeah.
And, well, I got the bad news today. He is no longer the head football coach at Auburn. They lost at home by 2 touchdowns to Arkansas on Saturday, dropping to 3-5. They are in danger of missing out on a bowl for the first time since 2012. Harsin, who was hired from Boise State, it was a weird hire on paper when it happened, not because Harsin wasn't a particularly good coach. It just seemed strange to go from Boise to Auburn, Alabama. And it never quite clicked in a cultural sense. It never was a good fit. And there was a lot of talk they were going to fire him after last year. That never came to pass.
Mhm.
There was all kinds of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge stuff that was never really like openly verbalized about how things were really going with Harsin at Auburn. Now this year they're 3-5. He finishes his career with a 9-12 record. Auburn is also changing athletic directors. They are hiring the athletic director from Mississippi State, who just today handed in his resignation at Mississippi State. He'll probably be introduced at Auburn in the coming days, I would imagine. But they couldn't wait to have an AD in place. They went ahead and they fired this coach. How much do they owe Brian Harsin? How about $15.5 million in buyout money? Half of that is due within 30 days. 2 years ago, Auburn decided to buy out Gus Malzahn. All he did was go 68-34 and go 3-4 against Nick Saban. What did that get him? $21.7 million to go away. So now that is $37.2 million in buyouts for Auburn the last 3 years.
What was that number again for Brian Harsin's buyout?
15.5.
15.5. That is enough. That is enough. That Texas A&M could hire Brian Harsin at that buyout 5.7 times for the same price they're paying Jimbo Fisher to have lost 4 games in a row.
They're going to miss a bowl.
It's so funny.
Texas A&M isn't going to go to a bowl game for all that money.
That is so funny.
By the way, let's remember a guy. The interim coach at Auburn will be Cadillac Williams.
This rules. That is awesome. Cadillac Williams was so freaking good in college.
He was. Yeah, nice NFL career, too.
Yeah, those injuries, man. Ugh, that sucked for him. He paired up with Ronnie Brown.
Yeah,
That was the
Thunder
Auburn,
and Lightning.
That was the 04 Auburn team that got left out of the title picture.
Yeah, 13-0 and number 3.
They were awesome. They were so good. There was just a feature about Cadillac. I think it was the weekend that game day came to KU. I think, or maybe it was the weekend after the weekend before. I remember seeing it with Abby. I can't remember if we were there or not, but they had a feature about Cadillac Williams. And I thought, oh my God, he was awesome. He was so good in college. That's so cool.
A text from 785. I'm guessing academics weren't particularly stressed during his tenure. It's Auburn. The only thing they're stressing is beat Alabama.
Yeah, quite literally.
Yeah.
I will tell you this much. Brian Harsin won plenty of games at Boise State. Their reputation academically did not change a whole lot while Brian Harsin was there. So that's probably something to keep in mind. Next headline for me today. This is mostly important for me, but I think there are some people out there who are also excited about this. Dan, it was made official today. The names of the teams for the rebirth of the XFL coming next year.
Oh, yeah.
They are official. The 2023 version of the XFL, the names are out. Mostly the same. By the way, okay, this is fun. Now that we are live streaming the show, not only are you going to hear me speak these names, I just put up a display on the YouTube. You can see the names right in front of you as well, tweeted out by Ari Merov of Pro Football Focus. How about that? Love technology. It's on the YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. Anyway, your team names. The Vegas Vipers, they used to be in Florida. They're not there anymore. They're now in Vegas. The Seattle Sea Dragons, which is hilariously funny. They were previously just the Dragons. Now they're like, what sounds more like Seahawks? I got it. Sea Dragons.
As opposed to those land dragons.
The Orlando Guardians, they used to be in New York. Now they're in Orlando. The St. Louis Battlehawks, because caca is the law, folks.
Oh, my God.
Cleared to engage. Back to the Dome in America Center we go.
Now people can see me. Now that we're on YouTube. Now people can see me face
Yeah, here we
palm
go.
every time you get too excited about spring football.
Face all the way in palm. Also included the San Antonio Brahmas, because the league's owned by The Rock now. Brahma Bulls.
That's actually kind of sick.
Yeah, it kind of is. The Arlington Renegades. They were previously the Dallas Renegades. They just play in Arlington. They play at the old Ranger Stadium.
Yes.
The old Globe Life Park. Because it's a perfectly good stadium that's not being used for anything else.
Right.
The Houston Roughnecks and the DC Defenders. Claim your team. Who you got?
It's baseball season when they're playing. Like, it's too much. We have too much. There is simply too much spring football. There is not room in the football ecosystem for both the USFL and this XFL.
That is an interesting point, though. Like, liked the USFL product for what it was. Like, it was largely background. Occasionally you'd see some cool plays. It was on. It was football. It was good enough. They got through a full season, which the AAF and the 2020 XFL could not do. The latter, obviously, ulterior circumstances. But you can't have two. There's not enough players. What they should have done is just merged the player pools and the teams together, pick the best 8 names, and just make it one spring league. You can't have two. There's just not, frankly, there's not enough quarterbacks.
Right? We barely have enough for the NFL.
The 785, we have a texter in who says, these are truly cringeworthy names. Yes, they're not good, except the Battlehawks, because I said I'm not going back to them if they change their name, but they're back. Because I own a Battlehawks t-shirt, because of course I do. I wore it on Saturday. I would have worn it today with this news. But instead, as I pointed out earlier, and as you can see on the YouTube, I'm wearing my Charles Barkley with Nirvana on Saturday Night Live shirt.
It's a very cool shirt.
This is one of the top 3 shirts I own. I also own one. They're all black, because of course they are. I own one that's the cast of Seinfeld that says Death Grips on it for the only musical act that has ever mattered, Death Grips. And I also got a shirt that has all the cast of Frasier on it, and it says the I'm Listening Tour 97, and they're dressed up like rock stars. It's incredible. Just came in this weekend.
I need you to get one with that picture of Wade Boggs with the flock from WCW.
My favorite picture of all time. Yes.
Just Wade Boggs kicking it with Raven. And you know they've already housed 2 12ers at PBR.
Oh, yeah. They're all mean mugging except Wade Boggs.
Wade
polo
Boggs
shirt.
He looks like a dad at Disney World.
It's incredible.
That is a great picture.
But yeah, if you're into spring football, XFL coming.
Next, Blue Dot of Kansas headline for me. An ugly story from the National Basketball Association continues to develop today as former San Antonio Spurs guard Josh Primo has cleared waivers and become an unrestricted free agent. Now, it was fairly shocking when the Spurs decided to waive Primo on Friday night, considering they made him the number 12 overall pick of last year's NBA draft. The 19-year-old Primo had been a heavy part of the Spurs rotation as a rookie and was seeing regular playing time in the early stages of this season before the Spurs, without much in the way of explanation, released Primo. Well, then the reporting came out and plenty of explanation. Primo has been accused of allegedly exposing himself to women on several occasions, including women who work for the San Antonio Spurs. Attorney Tony Busby has told ESPN that he has been retained by a woman who worked for the club and says Primo exposed himself to her. Now, if you know Tony Busby's name, that's because he has represented multiple women in the sexual misconduct lawsuits against current Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson. Primo gave a statement to ESPN on Friday saying that he had suffered previous trauma and will now take this time to focus on his mental health treatment more fully. The Spurs, in their statement, said that they hope this is something that is in the best interest of both their organization and of Josh Primo, who very clearly has a problem that needs to be addressed. I mean, look, I've lived 36 years and managed not to expose myself to anybody who wasn't asking to see anything.
Nope.
It's very easy to do. It's very easy to go through your day-to-day life and not do that.
Yeah.
It's incredibly easy.
Look, I don't want to discount that maybe there was something else at play here that has psychologically damaged him.
Right. Maybe I'm being too glib.
And he's young enough that I think you can overcome this and pay for your sins, so to speak, and become a better person, not do this, learn from it, make up for it. I do believe that's out there. But also, like, certain things there's not really just an excuse for, again, everybody's been through some stuff to varying degrees. I've been through issues in my life. I never thought I'm going to make up for this and try to compensate for it by dropping trow in front of some unsuspecting women. Like, that's not normal coping behavior.
No.
So I hope he gets help, but this is gross, man. This is awful. And especially in the wake of everything that happened with Deshaun Watson. I mean, I guess I don't want to give too much credit to the Spurs because if this was all kept under wraps, they probably would have kept them too. But it came out it was about to come out and they just cut bait and said, all right, screw it, which better than the Texans or the Browns.
This is true. And
bar is underground. Good Lord.
And they kind of benefited from doing it on the weekend that another much more prominent NBA player got in some very different kinds of anti-Semitic hot water.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And so this story kind of got buried in the NBA notes section. But yeah, that's notable today because he did indeed clear waivers. No other team placed a claim on him. So he is now a free agent. But I imagine he will remain one for quite some time.
I would have to think so. Final headline for me. It's a quick one from the Kansas City Chiefs. They have signed to their practice squad wide receiver Daz Newsome, a former second-team All-ACC pick from Virginia Tech. He was a late-round pick of the Chicago Bears last year. The 221st overall pick in the 6th round of last year's draft was waived this offseason, has bounced around on some practice squads. The Chiefs assigned him to their practice squad today. He was electric when he was in college. Also, I'm sorry, North Carolina. He had a brother, I think, or I'm confusing him with someone else who's at Virginia Tech. Daz Newsome, though, played at North Carolina. Originally had committed to Maryland, but electrifying player in college, not so much in the NFL so far. Had a lot of fumbling issues with the Bears. That's why they ended up cutting him. But maybe some juice, maybe a kick returner for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's what I would expect. I think that would be a potential move for bringing Newsome in. You probably don't want him offensively. You don't need him offensively, but to return kicks, I actually am kind of interested in that.
There might be some room on the 53-man roster before long, as Ronald Jones over the weekend took to Twitter to essentially ask for his release.
And the funny thing is that doesn't even really make headlines because he's been a complete afterthought. Like
right.
With Pacheco doing more and more, with McKinnon, frankly, being awesome for what he's been asked to do, and Edwards-Helaire being enough, there's no need for Ronald Jones. And you feel bad that you're kind of stuck in a contract, but also, if you played better, you probably wouldn't be in that situation. So.
Yeah, you went ring chasing, but you haven't adapted well enough, and hasn't been the occasion for you to contribute. But I don't think going on Twitter and saying, sure, it'd be nice to get a release right about now, or whatever it was that he said, it was something along those lines. I don't think that's the way to grease those skids. Maybe it is.
We'll find out here probably in the very near future. I actually am kind of interested in Newsome being a kick returner for the Chiefs. I actually have already bought into that. That took about 3 minutes, and I'm all the way bought in.
You talked yourself into it.
That does it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines, brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Go check our friends out online at bluedotkansas.com. Go, of course, check us out online as well on 580wibw.com, our new website URL. Also, we do have a comment on the Sports on 580 YouTube channel. Dan, I believe this is from someone you know pretty well, who commented, Primo was just signed by the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't want to give too much credit to the Spurs for doing the thing every team should do, but given the precedent from the recent past, I guess you have to give them at least some credit. God, the Browns are trash. I hope they get smoked tonight. We'll talk about Monday Night Football, Bengals versus Browns.
Good segue.
And the rest of the NFL from Week 8 coming up after this here on 580 Sports Talk. 532 on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. Check us out on Twitter at Sports on 580 for the entire Sports on 580 crew. You can find myself at Brendan DZW, Dan at Dan Lucero Show. Of course, go check out the YouTube. I know we're pumping it all day, but it's super cool, and we would love for you guys to check it out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out the live stream.
Drop some comments on the chat. You do not have to be related to either of the hosts to do that.
No, you do not. So now
it helps. It helps you get read.
That's true. Related people to the front of the line. But now you can listen to 580 Sports Talk and Mic'd Up on 580 WIBW. You can listen online through the Alpha Media players you've been doing for many years. And you can watch/listen on YouTube as well. Just look for Sports on 580 WIBW. You'll find us on YouTube. You can find our bright smiling faces right there, live streaming the entirety of the show. The first live streamed Mic'd Up show will be tomorrow from noon to 3 with Jake and Fulton, although I believe Fulton actually is out tomorrow. So it might just be Jake. It's just going to be a full screen of Jake tomorrow. After that, though, it'll be Jake and Fulton. And, of course, you can interact with us on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, and in the comments on the 580 YouTube as well. Let's get to some of the headlines from the NFL weekend. Busy week 8. Not an earth-shattering one, I don't think. Matt Verderame kind of alluded to that when we talked to him in the 3 o'clock hour of the show. Nothing changed for me with who the best teams in the NFL are. Like, no one really changed my mind about them. The Eagles are still really good. They blew out the Steelers. The Bills beat the Packers by 10, so Green Bay technically covered. I told you and Jake this earlier today, though. I actually feel worse about that game for the Packers today than I did yesterday. Like, oh, man, I saw so many Packers fans. Hey, they fought to the end. That's good.
This is the bare minimum.
How much farther down can the bar go? Good God. Like, yeah, the Packers finally ran the ball a lot, and Aaron Jones looked awesome. But the Bills were like, we're just going to play 2 safeties 80 yards back the entire game. Go ahead. They were running against 5-man boxes. You should be able to run for 150 yards. So
it was the most functional their running game has looked all year.
Yes.
And
I was at least having a good time watching. Well, good time is a stretch, but I was actually okay to watch it for a full 3 hours, which has not been the case for most games this season.
This is the thing that stood out to me. I really thought Buffalo was just going to annihilate them. Like, I really thought they might take a 31-3 lead into the locker room and just run away. I thought it would be as Matt Verderame put it last week, talking about the game, I thought the Packers were going to take their medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were going to get drummed. Josh Allen threw 2 of the worst interceptions of the day yesterday. And I say that about a day on which Zach Wilson quarterbacked the team and Kenny Pickett quarterbacked the team and Mac Jones quarterbacked the team. It was still some of the worst quarterback play I had seen with Josh Allen in the second half.
Like, very weird.
2 terrible interceptions. Mm-hmm. Not like, oh man, great play by the defensive back. No, just bad throws, bad decisions. And
the first one especially.
Yeah.
At least the last one, the game is late. You're throwing to the end zone, whatever. The first one, he's about to run out of bounds. There's back across his body. Looked like Favre in the 2009 championship game. Like, what is this?
And he does that at least once every game where he makes a decision where he goes, look, we've watched a lot of Patrick Mahomes play, and Patrick Mahomes has thrown interceptions, and Patrick Mahomes has made plays in his career where you wonder, what the heck was that? But Josh Allen does it on a weekly basis. Like, one time he has a brain cramp once per game. And that's why I can't put him above Mahomes, my quarterback power rankings,
that's
such
fair.
As they are. It's just that's the thing that's holding me back about putting him above Mahomes. And why that when those 2 teams play, I would still back the Chiefs to win the majority of the time because they have the better quarterback, I think. But, that's obviously another discussion point for probably the AFC Championship game.
I think that's entirely fair. And Mitch Holthus told us about that going into Chiefs Bills, right? Is that, hey, turnovers are going to be a thing in this game because Allen, as good as he is, does have a penchant for giving it away, either fumbles, which he does a lot too, or interceptions. And he did it twice last night. And for a lot of people who bet on the Bills to blow the Packers out, they ended up losing money.
The text line has a question for you, Brendan, from the 785. As a team owner of the Packers, they're especially interested in your opinion on this. Do you think Rodgers folds the tents if the team you own misses the playoffs?
As an NFL owner, I believe
You
in...
gave him, texter from the 785,
Yeah.
a reason to talk like this.
Yeah,
Just
that
be careful is all I'm saying.
entirely your fault for provoking me. As an NFL owner, I believe in not tanking for the strict rule that tanking is lame. And as someone who watches on TV, I don't want to give up in week 13. So no, I do not believe that. Here's the other thing, though, to be completely honest with you. There's so much that's made about Aaron Rodgers and his ego and how it's all about me and the attention and all of that. Tom Brady's retiring this year, right? Like, there's no way Tom Brady comes back for another year. His life outside the game seems to be in a bad place. He is not performing especially well. His team stinks. His coach is probably not very good. His offensive coordinator might not be very good. Everybody's getting hurt around him. He's not coming back, right? You really think Aaron Rodgers wants to go into the Hall of Fame the same year as Tom Brady?
That's a good point.
No! No way in hell. He's going to want that. If all is to be believed about his ego and all that, he doesn't want to go in the Hall of Fame the same year as Tom Brady. No. No chance.
Those two in a standoff to see who retires first, like in a meaningless September baseball game, and get two random relief pitchers doing an anthem standoff on their respective baselines. That's what's going to feel like.
That
I'm looking forward to it very much.
I always said I think it was going to be 3 seasons. This one and 2 more for Rodgers, because that's when the money kind of works out to when, okay, it makes sense that you'd retire here. The money evens out a little bit. I still think it's at least 1 more, because he's not going to retire with Brady, and I think he wants to give it 1 more go. I do not think he would give up after a year like this. And I still think the Packers might make a trade tomorrow. It might not matter. I mean, this offense is so bad, but I do think they make a trade, even if it's for a wide receiver 3. They need bodies, man. They got nobody. Did you know the name Samori Toure before last night?
I watch a lot of Nebraska football, so of course I did.
Okay, there you go.
No, I did not. No.
The only people who would say yes were either Packers fans or people who do watch a lot of Nebraska football. Our boss, who's a big Nebraska fan, he might have known Samori Toure. That's about it. Other notes from around the NFL.
I will say this about yesterday's action, really this whole week's action. I think it has crystallized kind of what the NFC power structure looks like to me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We've all kind of had to adjust to this reality where the Packers and the Buccaneers and the Rams, the 3 teams we thought were going to be the best teams in that league, in that conference, are all kind of buns to a respective degree. And I think that what they did this week, going back to Thursday night with Tampa Bay, I think that those teams have confirmed that they are in fact buns, that they are not in the conversation as real NFC contenders right now. I think your NFC hierarchy looks like this. I think it's the Eagles at the top. They manhandled Pittsburgh, which is what you're supposed to do against a bad team. They manhandled them. A.J. Brown had a huge game.
Huge game.
I know that's a depleted secondary for Pittsburgh, but they still have Minkah Fitzpatrick and A.J. Brown.
Who was getting sunned all game.
A.J. Brown big boyed him the entire afternoon. So the Eagles, I think, cemented that they are the big dogs in the NFC. And then behind them, in some order, it's 6-1 Minnesota, who keeps winning. They're winning 1-score games. They're winning the turnover battle on a week-in, week-out basis. Their only loss was primetime, that's how you beat Kirk Cousins. You turn the lights on. But they are 6-1, and they are winning those close games, and they are a very talented team. They've always had the talent.
Oh yeah,
The whole was less than the sum of its parts those final couple of years with Mike Zimmer, but it's finally starting to feel like the whole now is at least equal to the sum of the parts there in Minnesota. You have Dallas, which their offense got clicking with Dak Prescott back for his second week of action coming off that injury, and a whole lot more Tony Pollard, which ultimately, if they ever figure out that Tony Pollard is their best running back, look out for the Dallas Cowboys. I have no faith that they will ever come to that conclusion. That is obvious to everybody in the world except Jerry Jones. But if they ever figure that out and give Tony Pollard 20, 25 carries a game, look the hell out for that offense.
He's so good.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
He's something else. And that defense remains terrific. So obviously, Dallas is in that conversation. And I think you have to put the Seattle Seahawks in that conversation now.
For sure.
Because they go to 5-3. Their defense has gone in the last 3 weeks from 31st in the Football Outsiders DVOA out of 32 teams to 13th. They are all of a sudden balling on the defensive side. Uchenna Nwosu has been one of the most productive pass rushers in the league.
Mm-hmm.
They have drafted 2 rookies in Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant who are making impact plays in the secondary. And they've made some quiet schematic tweaks that have unlocked the rest of their defensive linemen. So guys like Poona Ford and Shelby Harris are out there making plays. Bruce Irvin was making plays for the Seahawks yesterday.
Turn back the clock night.
Talk about restoring the feeling. And then Geno Smith is still doing his thing. DK Metcalf looked like he may have suffered a season-ending injury. He played well yesterday. Absolutely built different. Kenneth Walker the third, he had a great game, but he had the big touchdown to put it away at the end. The Seahawks are playing drama-free winning football. It is.
You mentioned drama-free. What could that be about?
I didn't mean that. I meant it in the sense that, like, they're doing their business and taking their leads and, like, holding them in the fourth quarter and not relying on, like, a last-second double reverse touchdown, like at the end of Remember the Titans every week to win a game by 1 point. And so that their quarterback can thank the recovery water he drank before the game. It's very strange, but the Seahawks appear to actually be good. And with respect to the 49ers, who were terrific against the Rams, and they weaponized Christian McCaffrey almost immediately after acquiring him, Seattle still got the lead in that division, and they look like a playoff team. So those are, to me, those are the 5 best teams in the NFC. I just mentioned them. In whatever order you want to put them in, it's Eagles, Vikings, the Cowboys, the Seahawks, and the 49ers. That's your new power structure in the NFC. I think that was revealed this week.
And I don't think it's all that close, to be honest with you. I mean, if you want to put the Giants, I guess. They lost to one of those teams in the 5, but they're so limited at quarterback that it's going to be hard for them to break that group.
We finally saw what happens. Okay, now you're down double digits in the fourth quarter. Can Daniel Jones lead you back? And the answer is no.
As we all expected. Real quick, who you got tonight? Bengals or Browns?
Bengals or Browns? I think the Bengals are going to win pretty handily.
Even without Ja'Marr Chase?
Even without Ja'Marr Chase. I think Joe Burrow gets it going. And I think Joe Mixon has a big game. The Browns can't stop anybody.
No, they cannot.
They cannot stop anybody. And a Bengals team with a functional running game would be an absolutely terrifying offense. For one night, they're going to have a functional running game because the Browns absolutely cannot stop them on the ground. You might be inclined, listener, to play a same-game parlay tonight on Monday Night Football. And what's cool about FanDuel Sportsbook is you can combine props with bets from the same game to score an even bigger payout with a same-game parlay. Like tonight, for instance, you can take the Bengals minus 3.5. You can take the point spread. You can take a player prop or two, say Nick Chubb to score an anytime touchdown or Joe Burrow over his passing yards, and combine those for a same-game parlay. And there's no feeling like nailing a same-game parlay. Right, Brendan?
I had a pretty good weekend. The same gamers between Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday felt pretty good.
So lock in your bet today on FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in free bets, win or lose, with promo code Lucero. That's promo code Lucero. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 and present in Kansas. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable free bets. Expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
We'll take a quick break here on 580 Sports Talk. When we come back, best performance from the college football weekend and an all-time college football anniversary. We'll tell you what that is next on 580 Sports Talk. A year ago today, that pole assassin's monkey bit a child at a Halloween party. And that was tied back to an assistant coach on Steve Sarkisian's staff at Texas.
Yeah, it was.
It's one of the funniest stories that has ever come out. A child went into a woman's backyard, a family's backyard, and was bitten by their pet monkey who happened to be part of the woman's stripper act. That stripper was the wife of a Texas staffer. Pole assassin will... That's a top... Like, college football is the ultimate internet sport because it's so good for people who like spend a lot of their time on the internet and are into real weird, eccentric stuff, like us.
Right?
This is a maybe a top 3 story of all time. The stripper's monkey bit a child.
Yeah.
And the stripper is the wife of a Texas staffer. Everything that Steve Sarkisian touches turns into a circus, and almost quite literally that includes this. One of the greatest college football stories of all time.
Oh, so funny.
I'm so glad we were alive to experience it. What was your best performance from the college football weekend?
I'm going to butcher his name, and I feel bad about it. JTT.
That's what they called him on the broadcast, JTT.
Yeah. Not Jonathan Taylor Thomas from Home Improvement. Is it Tuimalau?
I think so.
JT Tuimalau?
Gus Johnson said it, I think, 3 different ways during the game.
Tuimalau? Yeah, they kept mangling his pronunciation. I feel honestly really badly about that, but by any name, he single-handedly turned a very close Penn State Ohio State game into a blowout. It was an utterly dominant performance from the Ohio State edge rusher that helped Ohio State ultimately blow out Penn State. Ohio State was starting to look pretty funny in the light, and then they pulled away and they won that game by 2 touchdowns. And all apparently seems clear once again for football Armageddon, which is what unbeaten Ohio State and unbeaten Michigan playing in Columbus on the final weekend of the regular season will be.
Ohio State, is this going to be a division year for the Big Ten? Is this the last year of divisions for them?
I think so.
I think it is. Ohio State is going to play Illinois for the Big Ten championship. Illinois, of all programs, Illinois has the best defense scoring-wise in the entire country. That is remarkable. By the way, my best performance of the weekend, Tennessee beat the brakes off of Kentucky. They whooped them. I really thought Kentucky was at least going to make that game competitive or interesting. It was not. That game was over by halftime. Tennessee is the real deal. They are really fun to watch. Hendon Hooker is now the betting favorite to win the Heisman this year, and rightfully so. That team is a joy. And next week, they get to play Georgia in what might honestly feel like the national championship game. It honestly might be the national championship game. Remember last year when the SEC title game, Georgia-Alabama, ended up being the national title game as well?
Mm-hmm.
That feels like what this game on Saturday could be between Tennessee and Georgia. Tennessee, for as much as we've made fun of him in recent years, Josh Heupel is the real deal with that team.
Yeah, and it's cool to see someone new, right?
Agreed.
Like it's been Alabama and it's been Georgia. And then it was LSU as well, obviously, in 2019. That's what a lot of people say this year's Tennessee reminds them of, that 2019 LSU team. Like, well, yeah, their offense is really good, but is it really good? And then they proved as it went that, yeah, it was, in fact, historically great. And their quarterback won the Heisman Trophy. And that might be what is happening here with the Volunteers. By the way, it is Tuimoloau.
He's a stud regardless.
Yeah.
He is awesome.
Learn how to pronounce his name because you're going to want to know it for like mock draft reasons.
Very soon. We'll take one more time out. We'll come back. We'll wrap up this edition of 580 Sports Talk with the final word. Time for a real quick final word to wrap up 580 Sports Talk. Dan.
One more time, one clap for Will Howard. He's him. He's figured it out. He is much improved, and Kansas State doesn't have a quarterback controversy. They just have two damn good quarterbacks.
Final word for me for today. Go check us out on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW. That is our YouTube channel. We are live streaming every episode of 580 Sports Talk from here on out. It's been a lot of fun today. Thank you all for engaging with us, watching on YouTube, chiming in on the comments as well. You can watch it live streamed on Twitter too. This is going to happen all the time. So make sure you are subscribed to us on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW, and of course, keep listening here on the Sports Voice of Kansas. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we'll talk all things Kansas Jayhawks with Michael Swain. Is Jalen Daniels back? We'll recap the NFL trade deadline and much more. That's tomorrow from 3 to 6. Until then, for Dan, I'm Brendan. We'll talk to you tomorrow.